Hello, everybody. This is Jonathan Lack, host of the Weekly Stuff podcast. And before Sean Chapman and I started doing this show regularly in 2012, we actually had a different podcast called The Monthly 10, which was an extension of my blog at the Denver Post's Your Hub at the time. Now, this was way back when we were still in high school, and we're still very much learning the ropes of podcasting and, life. These episodes are not available online anymore, and as long as I am alive, most of them will not be. But there are a couple that connect to various topics we've covered over the years, like Doctor Who, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Ones we've even referenced a couple of times on the show, especially in Doctor Who conversations. And I am taking those episodes out of the vault, dusting them off, and presenting them here on our YouTube channel to fill out and complete some of our playlists. The audio quality isn't great. The people you're about to listen to are not experts about anything at all, but it might be worth some fun. You'll see. This is the Weekly Stuff from the Vault.
Tony Stark makes you feel he's a cool exec with a heart of steel.
As Iron Man, all jets ablaze, he's fighting and sniping with repulsor rays. Amazing armor,
There's Iron Man.
a blazing bomber.
Hello and welcome to the Monthly Stuff podcast for April 2012. I'm Jonathan Lack,
And I'm Sean Chapman.
and we're here to talk about stuff. Avengers-related stuff, because in a couple of weeks, Marvel's The Avengers is hitting theaters. And, you excited, Sean?
I'm very excited.
I am too. I think there's a lot of good stuff coming out in 2012, but Avengers is right at the top of the list for excitement related.
And awesomeness.
Yes. Hopefully. Looks great.
Definitely.
Definitely.
It's not even
Yeah.
hopefully, it's just definitely.
Yes. There are so many reasons to be excited for this movie. We'll talk about that in a little bit. What we're going to do on this podcast is we're going to just sort of go through the history of Marvel movies with particular focus on the 5 Marvel Studios movies that are sort of the precursors to the Avengers film. And, we just want to look at how they got to this sort of mammoth point in film history, whether the film is a huge success or not. This is sort of like, the Harry Potter franchise or Lord of the Rings in terms of something no one's ever tried before.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing about it.
And it's fucking awesome.
Yes. So we will get there in a little bit, but first we're going to run over a little bit of information about the website and a little bit of entertainment news, but not too much this week. Really quickly about the website. I realized listening to old podcasts, I never mentioned the name of the website on here. It's www.jonathanlack.com. That's where you can visit for all the movie reviews, TV reviews, lots of other cool stuff. And we have a really exciting new project going on over on the website right now. I am uploading all of my old reviews and articles from 2007 to now. I just sort of realized I was backing them up into my Dropbox, and I realized I had all this content that, for various reasons, is no longer on the internet anymore. And I realized since I have a website, it may as well, go there and then people can access it, and it sort of expands how much my site has to offer. And it's, it allows me to put up a lot of stuff without having to write anything, which is always nice. So it's called the Jonathan Lack Review Archives. It's got some special logos and art that was done by my cousin Joseph Gast. Want to give him another shout out for sort of doing a really last minute but really good job on some of the artwork for that. And as you listen to this podcast, all of the year 2007 is up on the website, and all of the
The entirety of the year 2007 is on the website?
in my review history.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, that's got to take up a lot more server space than I thought you had.
Yes. So it's movie reviews, it's DVD reviews, some TV stuff, special features. 2008 movie reviews are all up. Hopefully there's a ton of them, and there's at least 2 or 3 times more from 2008, just that I've got to get up in addition. And then we'll move on to 2010 and 2009, and then 10 and 11, where I sort of got increasingly prolific, and that's difficult because I'm having to do these all one by one, but they all bear their original publication dates, so you won't see them on the main page of the site, but you can go into the archives, and they will be there. And the other new regular feature we've got since we last podcasted is the AMC show Mad Men, which is my favorite show on TV. Finally came back after a 17-month hiatus. And I have reviews that are a regular feature. They've been very popular. This week's one got 400 views overnight, which was pretty nice. So if you like Mad Men, you can read those. I think they're pretty good.
but I am sort of a biased source on that.
Yeah, I think you're very much biased. Source.
Yes. All right. Thank you. And I will be. This is where we're putting out this podcast on Wednesday, the 18th. I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so there will be no movie reviews on the website. There should still be your regular Springsteen Sundays column. There may be a Mad Men review Sunday night. Probably not. It depends on where I am Sunday night. If not, it'll be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday when it goes up. It depends. And yeah, I should have some other articles, though. I'm actually going to San Francisco to see Bruce Springsteen, so we should have a series of articles about that. Cool stuff. And then once I get back, everything will resume as normal. Now, let's move on to not website news, but entertainment news.
News and entertainment.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Now, Sean, can you remind the listeners what our last podcast was about?
Our last podcast was discussing the discussion about whether or not there's going to be a new generation of consoles coming up soon.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of speculation about it being ridiculously soon, as in like the next year, or like the next month, or like the next second.
Yes, IGN was reporting pretty much every day that Microsoft was going to release a new Xbox at E3 2012. Sean and I both said there's no possible way that's happening. And literally 2 or 3 days after we put that podcast up, IGN did confirm from Microsoft that there will be no new Xbox revealed or announced or even hinted at E3 2012. Microsoft apparently was getting fed up with the rumors and wanted to make it clear they are not releasing a new Xbox this year, and they are probably not releasing one next year. So
Bill, we know you're listening to the podcast. Thank you for deciding to quell the rumors after listening to our podcast.
Good
Thanks
job.
a lot, Bill.
Yep. All right. Now, the next piece of news, I'm just going to let Sean talk about this. We talked a little bit about Sean reviewed Mass Effect 3 on the last podcast, and at the time, the controversy over the game's ending had just sort of started, but it exploded after we put the podcast out. Sean, I'm going to let you talk about that and your opinions on it and what's happened since.
Okay, so when I talked about Mass Effect 3 on the last podcast, I was aware that there was a lot of controversy about the ending at the time before I even got to the ending. So I understood that there was a lot of people who really didn't like it. And the only reason I kind of understood why they didn't like it at the time, and what I said on the podcast, was that I thought they could have expanded out probably like the last maybe like 3 minutes of the ending into like a 10 to 15 minute section with a lot of cutscenes. And I could understand that, but I really, really love the ending, and having thought about the ending more after having played the game, I like the ending even more now, so I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I get the complaints, but I think they're kind of really childish complaints, and that there's a lot of stuff that happens at the very end of Mass Effect 3 that, if you take it kind of at face value, it maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but you're not really supposed to take it at face value. It's really inviting you to make your own sort of analysis of it and kind of come up with your own theory about what's happening, as good sci-fi is supposed to do.
You know, that's the kind of ending I like, too. And this whole controversy reminds me a little bit of when Lost ended, and just the complaints I'm hearing. Because I've been avoiding spoilers because I'm playing Mass Effect now. But the kinds of ending where it's a lot of people who just seem to... It seems like the kind of controversy where people weren't going to be satisfied with most
Yeah, I don't think anyone was going to be satisfied. I mean, I really loved the ending. I thought it was great.
And honestly, I haven't talked to anyone who didn't like the ending, like a human being in person. But
it's the same thing with me, actually. Everyone I've talked to is like the ending, and it's only like online, but it's mostly... The one complaint that I really think is kind of weird is that everyone's saying this, like, there's not enough closure. There needs to be more closure. And for me, I thought what was brilliant... I don't want to spoil too much, but for me, I thought what was kind of brilliant is that they don't do the closure thing. They kind of leave the closure out of it. And I think there's a really great reason for that, but it's still kind of a new game. You haven't played it, so I can't spoil that. But I think that there not being closure is kind of part of the point of the ending. And so and they've said that they're, after all the criticism and all the kind of outrage online, BioWare has revealed that they're going to release Epilogue DLC. And they've basically said they're not going to change what happens in the ending, but they're going to add extra cutscenes to kind of explain and expand the ending, and I think that's probably fine. I mean, without seeing the content, I can't judge how it's going to turn out. But I think that's the best way to go. I don't think they should change the ending entirely, but adding some explanation at the end, to kind of like probably what happens to some of your squad members and stuff. Yeah. I can live with that. Like, a lot of people were saying that what they wanted was kind of this really stereotypical RPG ending that I really actually hate. It's kind of like the sport, like the '80s sports movie ending,
Yeah.
where it's like, it goes through like a picture of all the different characters,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, this guy became a janitor in 2011. It's like, oh, this person went on to go kick a goldfish somewhere.
And you could end it with Shepard like just jumping in the air and it
Yeah,
freeze
it's
frames
like,
on him fist pumping.
and then it goes through all your different, like, every single, like, million people that you've met on your journey.
Yeah.
And it's like gives you a few sentences about what happens, and that's kind of how another BioWare RPG, Dragon Age Origins, ended. And I thought that's kind of, it's just like a really lame way to end it, and it's so overdone. So I thought it was actually kind of cool that they didn't go with that. So we'll see what happens with the epilogue DLC. I kind of wish that they hadn't done it, and I think a lot of the criticism is kind of childish, and that it's not approaching. It's coming from all these people who are saying that it's like video games need to be respected as an art form and needs to be treated as an art form, but they don't treat the product as an art itself.
Yeah.
They don't approach it with any sort of attempt to analyze or understand it on their own part. If it doesn't make immediate sense to them, they say it doesn't make any sense at all without.
Yeah.
There's enough there. There's enough ambiguity there that you can make sense of it yourself.
Yeah.
And there's all these people like coming up with like an explanation for the ending, calling the indoctrination theory. And I don't like that they call it a theory, because that opens it to be like that it can be disproven or proven. And it's kind of, there's no like right ending. It's kind of like with Inception, there's like all those people are like, what really happens at the end of Inception?
The point is the ambiguity.
It's like, what happens after the cut? It's like, it's a fucking movie. Nothing happened after the last cut, because that was the last cut. There is no true ending. Like, even if Christopher Nolan was like, no, it was all a dream, that has no more veracity than like your own analytical claims about the movie.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves with any kind of art, is people who can't just accept ambiguity for what it is, because some of my favorite endings of all time are endings like that. And it's not me, I immediately start thinking what happens after it. The point is where it ends.
Yeah.
And then I hate people who immediately the movie ends or the game ends or something, and they'll start talking about, well, what must have happened. But yeah, I haven't played the Mass Effect games that much. I've started on one, but my general opinion with this kind of stuff is I like what you said about art. Is that video games, I believe they're art, but this isn't the attitude you give towards art, and part of that is that they don't have, and I think it's detrimental to have the attitude that, okay, we need to do exactly what the fans, whatever the fans are, this mystical word they're saying, because art isn't necessarily a two-way street. The best creative visions are usually the ones where they put out they listen to the fan base, but they don't bow to them.
Yeah.
All the time. So.
It actually reminds me of, I saw one person who was like, and like this person, like everyone was like complimenting them and saying it's like, oh, this is really, really great. And they wrote their own ending, where it's like how they wanted it to end. It was like, and it like takes up most of how it actually ends, and then adds like this huge scene on at the end, where it's like this 10-minute dialogue that this person wrote, and it's like. And where it takes place, it's like it's like Shepard at that moment, he's not going to stand there and talk to like this person for like 10 fucking minutes at the end of this game. It's like, it makes no sense. It's like the ending I guess it kind of feels rushed, but it's supposed to feel rushed because Shepard feels rushed. It's like you're supposed to identify with that experience. It's like, and you could so easily tell where the person started writing and where the like BioWare ended. Yeah. Like, where the BioWare section ended and, like, the fanfic section began. It's like, oh my god, this is so terrible. It's like, thank god they're not going to just, like, copy-paste this, like, person's little paragraph thing at the end there and put it in their own game.
But it seems like the solution they've come up with is good, because if you wanted to, for instance, you could just ignore it forever.
It's like, if I don't like it, I'll probably just basically ignore it, because it's like the thing exists as a piece of art on its own. It's like, in your own interpretation of that art is what gives it meaning. The piece doesn't have meaning on its own. Your experience with it is what has the meaning, and so nobody's experience is any more valid than anyone else's. And I would just invite people who didn't like the ending to maybe open up and think about the ending a little bit more and come up with how would this make sense, and that might be a very enriching experience for some of you.
So, can I really quickly talk about what I think about the Mass. I'm years late on this game, but I just started playing Mass Effect 1.
Mass Effect. I think Mass Effect 1 came out in like 2007. So apparently it's going to be on your website, or it's already on your website.
No, that's okay.
With the rest of the year 2007.
My point is, I just started playing Mass Effect, and I just want to really quickly say how much I am completely in love with that game right from the beginning. You were talking last week about how last month, how the Citadel part is kind of dull.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the Citadel
No,
part,
you
and
didn't.
I think it's just because when I started playing Mass Effect, what drew me into it is that it was such an interactive artistic experience where I
Yeah.
created a character and I had this immediate connection to this person, and it was like no one else is going to have this exact character or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a femshep, and because I really like the voice actress.
Yeah,
who
Jennifer.
does that.
I think Jennifer Hale probably does some better voice acting.
Yeah.
Although my own personal character was
Yeah.
I kind of, since I built it over 3 games, I kind of have role played a little bit with it.
Yeah.
And how the guy voice acts when you do because my main shepherd's like a full paragon, so he's like really goody two shoes, but he's so goody two shoes that I'm like, my shepherd, he's a total fucking sociopath, and that's the only way he can be this good is by having no emotion or empathy, because that's how he's able to make these really rational choices and
But
and
when
that's kind of his voice acting kind of supports that, so I like it.
But I just, I created this femshep, and I think she makes a really interesting character, and I like with the choices you can make, and just sort of the amount you customize, and then that customization is represented right away. And my favorite part of the game so far really is the dialogue trees. I just love those, and just going through that and building a character as you're playing, and feeling that personal connection where it's like, I am using, this video game interface to create a character and really do this role-playing thing, and it's just
I really
fun.
think Mass Effect, more than most games, invites you to role-play, and that a lot of the other older RPGs that were based really heavily on D&D systems, Dungeons and Dragons systems, really put the onus entirely on the player to role-play, where it's like Mass Effect kind of meets you halfway and building a sort of character on its own, but you get to fill in the gaps with your own ideas.
Now, that being said, everything I just said, I really am enjoying the game. Once I got off the Citadel, I am completely lost, and I am going to be asking Sean for help after this podcast is recorded.
Okay.
Because
I think I'm a good person to ask, because I've 100% completed Mass Effect 5 times.
Yes. The thing is, you've talked about this before, it is a little confusing, the controls and combat stuff.
Yeah,
and,
Mass Effect 1, it is a little unpolished in those areas.
And it doesn't, I just wish it had an in-game tutorial. It's not giving me that, and it doesn't seem, and I looked online to see if I had turned it off or something, and apparently it just doesn't have it.
There's it has a little tutorial stuff on Eden Prime, but I agree it's not really enough because so much. I think I know where you're at. And it's so much stuff opens up after you get off the Citadel that it doesn't kind of need to explain and guide you a little bit more. Yeah. I agree with that.
Well, they gave me all these options, and I said, okay, I'll go to that planet. I found it in the map. I went there. I got in the Jeep thing. What's it called?
The Mako.
The Mako. I drove around. Mako. I found a bunch of enemies, killed them, got in, and I found some item I didn't even need, and then it turned out that planet wasn't somewhere I needed to be. And then
there's a billion planets that you don't need to be on, but you end up exploring for no apparent reason whatsoever.
But oh well, I still really like it so far. I have determined that Keith David really should be in every video game. That should be a law.
He practically, him and Nolan North practically are in every single video game. Actually, I don't think Nolan North. I don't think I've ever spotted him in Mass Effect, so he might not be there. That'd be kind of surprising.
They're saving him, and if they do another trilogy, he'll be the main character.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Anyway, cool game. I like it. And with the Citadel, for me, it was just exploring and meeting people and doing a lot of dialogue trees, and I liked the story there and sort of the intrigue of learning about the Reapers. And
I'm kind of surprised that you like the Citadel that much, because even my own personal experience, the first time I played Mass Effect, I didn't like the Citadel that much. And it's it was only once I got past it that I thought it was really fun. That's how most people feel. But then once I go back with another character, I love the Citadel stuff.
And maybe that's just because that's what I grabbed onto right away was the character-based stuff, and that's what that part of the game is all about.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's cool. And the graphics, I know this is a 2007 game, and I'm sure the sequels look better, but I have never seen facial animation that good.
Well, you haven't played L.A. Noire.
Okay.
But, Mass Effect does do facial animation. I think, the graphics engine doesn't evolve that much. They polish it, but it's the same basic engine. I still think it looks really good now.
Yeah.
I think it's a really solid. I just like how the style of it, and they took so much from classic sci-fi movies. It just makes it feel.
I love that it
really
looks.
classic.
I love that it has this grainy texture to it. Mm-hmm. It almost looks like Blade Runner or something in that way, and sort of muted colors. But anyway, we're talking about an old game at this point, so we're going to talk about other old stuff in the context of something new. Let's move on to the topic.
The topic.
I wish we had musical cues.
The topic.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna cut that out, and we're just gonna loop it every episode.
Okay.
All right. So the Avengers is coming out on May 4th, and I think it's time to talk about some Marvel movies. But first, before we talk about anything, let's just set the stage for the Avengers.
I think we've already talked about some stuff, so we can't
Okay.
do anything before we talk about anything.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the Avengers, your personal excitement, thoughts on it, and maybe a little history, what it means for this sort of industry?
So yeah, I mean, if you've listened to the podcast before, you know I read a lot of comic books when I was younger, and I'm still reading a lot of comic books now. And I'm a huge fan of the Silver Age with Marvel. Well, that's like really when Marvel took off, was in the Silver Age of comics, when they did Fantastic Four, and then they did like Spider-Man and the Hulk and Iron Man. They brought back Captain America. They did Thor. They did like Daredevil. They just like thousands of like the most iconic characters of today were all made in that period of time by like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all those people.
That is such an amazing creative explosion to think that little
Yeah,
group of
that
people-
all those characters.
Yeah.
Now, and so I love, and it's just so perfect that I grew up reading, because my dad grew up reading those comics when he was a kid, so I kind of inherited that from him
Yeah.
and reading a lot of those old comics. And then it was just so perfect that when I was growing up, then that's also when they started making all these movies. So I kind of had this really interesting experience about being able to read the origins of these characters and then also seeing how they're being interpreted today.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited for the Avengers because what it means to me is sort of this full realization of like a new Marvel universe in a way. And one of the coolest things about the old Marvel comic books is that they made all these different really great characters, but then they also inhabited this world together where you would just, when you were reading a comic book, if you were even like reading like Daredevil, and Daredevil's like at a court case, and there's a photographer at the court case, it could just be Peter Parker, and it would just be Peter Parker, and he's just there. He doesn't even need to be Spider-Man. And so you'd have all these characters just inhabiting this world together, making cameo appearances in comic books that just doesn't even need to be important that they're there.
Yeah.
And so they just created this really interesting world and universe with the Marvel setting. And that's kind of like with the Avengers, they're kind of bringing that into the cinematic world. And I think that's completely unprecedented as far as I'm aware. Nothing like that has ever happened before. And I'm really excited to see that sort of be fully realized with the Avengers because it's been building up for so long.
I'm coming to the Avengers not from a comics background, although I checked out that Comixology app you told me to check out. It's awesome. It is friggin' awesome.
It's a good way to lose a lot of money.
Yes,
really
it is.
Fast.
I like that new Batman series. Anyway, that's DC.
Yeah, Scott's is
yeah,
awesome.
Great work. Anyway, so the Avengers. I come to this from the movie background, and I've been, like Sean, watching these movies since I was a little kid because that's when they started. Mm-hmm. And I think some people are who follow movies are annoyed by the influx of comic book movies. I love it because I think we're getting to a point where there is a consistent level of quality, especially in the Marvel universe, that is so satisfying to watch, where you can trust that every summer you're going to get a Marvel movie and it's going to be good and it's going to be fun. And I think, I don't read a lot of comic books, but I think that's how people feel about the comics experience too, obviously more on like a weekly basis or something, but it's sort of the film equivalent. And the Avengers, if they pull it off, and I think at this point it's not even an if, it looks like they have done it.
Yeah.
And when they pull it off, it's going to mean that this big experiment has worked, and more importantly, that it's been legitimized, and that they will be able to do more of it in the future, and they will be able to add more characters to this universe, and that Marvel Studios will hopefully have the money to keep doing this and keep up this level of quality and keep taking chances on directors. That's the big thing, too, I think. When we talk about these movies, they really took chances on most of the directors of these, and it pulled off. And the main, I will say this, as I love all the Marvel movies so far, I am over the moon with excitement about the Avengers because it's written and directed by Joss Whedon, who is, really one of my heroes in the world of writing and directing. You can talk about his comics background a little better than I can, but he is certainly probably the most qualified man for the job.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of
Yeah.
anyone else because I don't really know anyone else who
Yeah.
started writing comic books, then went to writing TV shows and movies, and then went to directing TV shows and stuff. That's
and really
interesting career path.
And honestly, you look at his shows, and they're exactly what the Avengers needs because it's sort of. He works with ensembles. He works with ensembles really well. Mm-hmm. He does a great job with character, and I think that's the number one thing you need to manage in a movie like The Avengers. Yeah. And as we saw with Serenity, he can do big special effects. Awesome. And Serenity cost $20 million, and it looks like it's a $100 million movie. Mm-hmm. So now he has $200 million. The Avengers should look pretty incredible.
Hopefully it doesn't look like a $2 million movie.
Yeah, that would be weird if it was inverse. Yeah. All right.
You guys just get some happy medium where it's the maximum.
Yes. So really excited about the Avengers. And we are going to mainly focus in this section on the Marvel Studios movies, which began with Iron Man in 2008. But before then, I want to do a brief overview of what the sort of state of Marvel movies was before they created their own movie studio. Mm-hmm. And, I looked at the list on Wikipedia and some other sites of what they did, and there are a couple random movies here and there, like the Captain America TV movie from 1990.
Well, they did like a few of those. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah, or the Fantastic Four movie that was produced but never released because it was made for contractual issues. So there were some movies based on Marvel Comics, but not a lot until 1998 is probably when the modern trend started. And I was surprised to learn this was the movie Blade that sort of kicked all that off with Wesley Snipes. Neither Sean nor I have seen it, and Sean, you're not a big fan of the comics.
It's just it's not something that really... I've seen Blade a few times. He was in a Spider-Man where Spider-Man fought Dracula.
Yeah.
So and I kind of wish that they had kept his old 70s costume, because he looks complete. He's got this weird green sweater type thing. He does not look cool. It's not all black leather fetishism like the Matrix. It's really lame, and I kind of wish they had kept that. But.
Okay. Anyway, Blade had 2 sequels, and then but they were later. But in the year 2000 is when
the sequels were after the first movie.
Yes.
Huh.
What I was going to say is they're later than the next movie we're going to talk about. But
you should have the next movie first and then said that the sequel was later.
The big movie that sort of took off sort of the trend of adapting Marvel properties was X-Men in 2000, Bryan Singer's X-Men. And that obviously spawned a really big film franchise that has 5 movies now, and there are more coming down the pipeline. I know they're producing right now First Class 2 and the Wolverine
You mean
sequel.
Second Class?
Yeah, Second Class.
I hope they call it Second Class.
That would be
means
cool.
we would get a whole new class of people that don't like the First Class that much.
Okay. We'll get to that. And then, of course, in 2002, I believe it was, the Spider-Man series started. And the Spider-Man also had a trilogy and is going to have a reboot this year. And so the whole idea, though, here is that Marvel really didn't have much of a hand in the production of these movies. The company itself, Spider-Man was bought by Columbia, and Columbia found Sam Raimi, and he did the movies through Columbia. And, Fox bought the rights to X-Men, and these companies still own all these. And in the wake of this, there were a lot of other Marvel properties that were bought up and turned into movies. And outside of the Spider-Man, X-Men, and Blade trilogies, they were all failures. And that's something that's sort of interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Because we don't say Marvel failure right now, because they've done such a good job turning that around. But for the most part, even though movies like Spider-Man and X-Men, broke box office records, for the most part, these movies were kind of failures critically and commercially. You had Ang Lee's Hulk, which to this day is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I barely remember it.
It's bad. It's like a big budget art film, but not a good art film.
I remember I rented the video game version of it. I remember the video game version more. The video game version was probably worse.
Okay.
Don't rent the really old Xbox Hulk game.
Yeah.
There's a later Xbox Hulk game that's a lot better.
Yes. So there was the Fantastic Four series to a certain degree. The first one was not a huge success, but they made a sequel. That one wasn't that much of a success either, so there's no more of those. Did you see Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I saw both of them.
Okay.
I didn't think they were terrible, but they definitely weren't great movies.
I did not like the first one at all. It was like a bad sitcom where they didn't even do any fighting. They just hung out in their apartment and argued for 2 hours.
That's basically Fantastic Four.
Okay.
That's what they mostly do.
But I thought the sequel was a big improvement, and to be honest, I did kind of like Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, I remember Rise of the Silver Surfer was a lot better.
Yeah.
Although I still kind of wish that they had just gone with old school Galactus. He's just this really, really big guy in a purple jumpsuit.
And Fantastic
that's how he eats planets, is he just eats them.
And to me, the Fantastic Four series was always creatively disappointing because I think there was potential in both of the movies. Particularly, I always really liked Michael Chiklis as the Thing, and Chris Evans, who would later go on to be a very successful superhero star. I thought he was a perfect Human Torch. It just so happened that Jessica Alba was terrible.
I have no idea why they made the choice to make her Sue Storm. That's
that was bad.
She's so far away from Sue Storm. It's unbelievable.
The reason they did it is clear, Sean. She's a hot blonde chick who will get young men into the theater.
Yeah, but no.
And Ewan Grufford, I don't know how to say his name, as Mr. Fantastic, was incredibly bland, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of because I really like the Fantastic Four in the comics, so it is really disappointing. Because I think it's weird because it seems like they wouldn't be that hard to make into a good movie.
Yeah. Well, and if the rights ever go back to Marvel on that, they could hit it out of the park, I feel. Just, get a good director and a good cast together.
Because they're such an important part of the Marvel Universe, because they're like the first heroes, and they always pop up, so I wish they would.
Well, it's been so many years since they made one. I'm thinking it is possible that those rights are going to revert. So, fingers crossed. Ghost Rider, which I just had a sequel this year for some nobody knows why, and the sequel did even worse than the original.
And it's like, from everything I read too, it seems like the sequel has almost nothing to do with the original, other than it's Nicolas Cage again.
Yeah. So and the original, you didn't see it?
No, I don't care that much about
Ghost Rider. Yeah.
Like, to me, Ghost Rider doesn't. He's just such a weird hero to make. It's kind of the same thing with Blade. It's like, but Blade's he's a lot more high profile. But they're these really B or C list superheroes that nobody has any idea who freaking Ghost Rider is. Like, I've read definitely thousands of Marvel comic books, and the only time I have ever read a comic book that had Ghost Rider in it was I read a random issue of Moon Knight from the 1980s. Nobody has. Do you have any idea who Moon Knight is?
No.
Have you ever heard of Moon Knight?
No.
It's like, I'm probably like one of maybe the 500 people on the planet. And most of those people work at Marvel who still knows who Moon Knight is.
Yeah.
So that tells you how just weird and obscure Ghost Rider is. He's a dude with a flaming head who goes around on a motorcycle and hits people with chains.
But don't you think, on a certain level, that movie should at least be memorable because it is a dude with a flaming skull who goes around hitting people with chains?
Yeah, the movie, it seemes like the movie should be terribly memorable. Yeah. Like, it shouldn't be a good movie, but it should be a much more fun movie than what I imagine it is.
That's the original Ghost Rider. I refuse to see the sequel because I heard nothing but bad things about it. But the first one was the blandest superhero movie I've ever seen, including Fantastic Four. It was just boring. Nothing happened for 2 straight hours. Nicolas Cage was awful, but he usually is. It was bad. And I remember literally nothing about it except he did a stunt jump at some point in the movie. I don't even remember who the bad guy was or who. I just have an image of Nicolas Cage on a motorcycle doing a stunt jump, and he wasn't even Ghost Rider then. So I don't even have any memories of him being Ghost Rider in the movie.
So I'm just thinking about a Moon Knight movie now. They should have made a Moon Knight movie before they made a Ghost Rider movie. Because Moon Knight's, he's basically Marvel's Batman, only he has multiple personality disorders. That's who Moon Knight is. Seriously, if you just take Bruce Wayne, give him multiple personality disorder, and replace Bat with Moon, that's who Moon Knight is. Instead of a Batwing, he has the Moon Copter.
Nice. But does it weird you out a little that they got around to Ghost Rider before Iron Man or Captain America or any of those?
Yeah, I don't know how much it cost, but it must have. They probably didn't put that much money into Ghost Rider, did they?
No, I don't think so.
They probably were just waiting to get enough money to make an Iron Man movie. It seems like an Iron Man movie would be a lot harder to make than just farting out a Ghost Rider movie.
And I think Ghost Rider was Fox again. Fox did a lot of bad ones. Ghost Rider and Fantastic Four and X-Men 3 and Wolverine.
Fox do Daredevil?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Daredevil is...
terrible.
You want to rant about that?
Oh, God. I don't just...
Daredevil, another failed franchise.
Daredevil's just... And it's so disappointing because Daredevil's so cool. He's such a cool hero. And they just... I don't even know what they did with him. They just, made a terrible movie. They made, I also, hate what they did with, the Kingpin. They made the Kingpin really lame.
Yeah.
And they, wasted him because he's an awesome
villain. They had a great actor playing him, too. It was Michael Clark Duncan, I think.
And they made him black. That was really weird because Kingpin's not black.
Okay, he isn't?
No,
okay.
It's just it's kind of a weird trend where they're making a lot of white characters black now. Nick Fury kind of got started with the comics, turning him into Samuel L. Jackson, but he was originally white, now he's black. They made Kingpin was white, and then they made him black. I wonder what's going on with that.
But I agree, he was sort of a bland character in the movie, and white or black, they had an interesting actor playing him.
And should have but there's no reason to have Kingpin really be in the Daredevil movie because Kingpin's a Spider-Man villain basically. I didn't
even know that.
He has a big presence in the Marvel universe because he's the Kingpin of crime, but he's basically a Spider-Man villain.
Okay.
So for some reason they just threw him in to Daredevil.
Yeah.
And then they had
Ben Affleck was terrible.
Bullseye was just awful.
Colin Farrell was Bullseye. And I like Colin Farrell, but no,
Bullseye was.
It's not his fault. I don't think it's anyone's fault, and it was just a bad movie. But
everything was just bad in that movie. And then they decided to make Elektra. I never saw Elektra, but
no, poor Jennifer Garner. She could have had a movie career after Alias if it weren't for these films, but that kind of destroyed that dream. Yeah, Daredevil was bad.
Hopefully they'll eventually...
Daredevil was also like just a completely humorless and funless movie. It was like just nonstop brutality and just cynicism and nothing that was even remotely entertaining. It was, the ending was just all this brutal murder and stuff going on, and it was, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't have a dark superhero movies. There are many great dark superhero movies, but even Spider-Man 2 has fun moments,
Yeah.
But, yeah, so we've talked about all the failed franchises, but really quickly, I mean, we've talked about the Spider-Man series before. Columbia did a great job on those until the third one, and even then I don't dislike it nearly as much as most people.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone makes such a huge deal out of, like, the dance scene. It's like, the dance scene's really bad, but it's like...
It's 2 minutes out of a 150-minute movie.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Yeah, and I like Spider-Man, and especially Spider-Man 2, which is one of my 10 favorite films of all time. I really love it. And, X-Men to me didn't... I like the first two X-Men movies. The only one I could say I really love is First Class, but I know you and I disagree on that.
Like, I think First Class is probably the best one, but I think... I just really dislike how they tried to tie it into the other movies to, like, the detriment of First Class.
Yeah.
Because they just kind of... All the other than Xavier and Magneto, all the other mutants were just kind of like wasted.
They were bland,
they made it. I also don't really like how they just like made a really weird, completely new Mystique that has like nothing to do. They took all the Mystique out of Mystique, and that's kind of weird.
I mean, I don't know about the comics.
Mystique has the Mystique in First Class, nothing to do with the Mystique in the.
I like Jennifer Lawrence.
Mystique is like 500 years old in the comics.
Yeah.
She's like older than Wolverine.
Okay. And I don't know that, and I just, coming from not a comics perspective, I like that character in the movie, but that's more because I thought Jennifer Lawrence was really good in the part.
I mean, she was really good. It's just like, it was just like, wasn't really Mystique. And then also, I think the end of the movie, there's a lot of character shifts that don't really make sense, that weren't fully
To me,
developed.
it worked really well. I liked First Class up until the last half hour, and the last half hour is what made me love it.
See, that's weird. It's almost kind of the opposite with me. It's like I really liked it, and then at the very end, it's like a bunch of characters turned evil. That's like they shouldn't have turned evil yet. But it's like,
but I will say about
one more movie for that.
I will say about First Class and Spider-Man 2, which are the best of the non-Marvel Studios Marvel movies. I think we can agree, is that when you look at why they work, it's because whatever the studio was gave a good amount of creative control to the director and writer. Spider-Man 2 has a lot of Sam Raimi's voice in it. It has a lot of the screenwriter's voice in it. It's not a studio manufactured product.
Yeah.
Which is what hurt Spider-Man 3 is there was all the studio mandates that, like you have to put Venom in, you have to put this character in, you have to put this in. And that overloaded the movie.
Yeah.
And with First Class, Matthew Vaughn was allowed to do whatever he wanted, and it's stylistically it's really interesting. I like that they did sort of almost a James Bondian interpretation in parts of the X-Men universe.
Yeah, it's like I think for me, it's like First Class probably would have been really great if they had just had the First Class, instead of having like Havoc be there instead of Cyclops.
And that's the studio side of it. Is they said you have to not use these mutants. And
it's like because like the actual class had no real team dynamic, and so it was just kind of disappointing.
So, and anyway, but do you want to talk about
some more class?
Yes,
that's my analysis.
But so those are the sort of what was I think general trends in these movies is that if you look at how they failed. Or sometimes how they worked, but usually how they failed, is that these were big studio movies that didn't have, where the studios themselves didn't have any investment in the material, and so if they worked, it's because the filmmaker had a passion for it and did a good job. But a lot of the time, that wasn't the case, and I think that's the biggest difference between these pre-Marvel Studios movies and the Marvel Studios films.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like it's really because since Marvel is making it, they have a really big investment of representing their own property the right way.
Yeah.
Because hopefully it will like relate back to the sales on their comic book side and stuff like that. So like I think they were much more invested in making a very comic book movie instead of the studios just more invested in just kind of making money instead of like representing the property.
Right. And I mean, and also Marvel Studios, they created it so they could make their own good movies based on their properties. And that, I don't remember when they started this whole project and everything, but they, 2008 is when Iron Man came out, and that was their first Marvel Studios movie. We have Jon Favreau directing, stars Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, which people will have completely forgotten this. At the time, that was one of the biggest risks in Hollywood history. was getting, for one, they had a ton of trouble getting him insured for the movie because he had been off drugs for a couple of years at this point, and he had sobered up, but the insurance companies that insure actors for movies were still very wary of signing Robert Downey Jr. to this giant blockbuster. The studio wanted Jon Favreau to cast someone else. Jon Favreau was very adamant about this, and today no one would ever question that decision. But let's take a step back. So it's 2008. It's May. It came out, I think, like May 2nd, 2008. What was your anticipation level coming into Iron Man?
Really, really high, because I remember the trailers
were fantastic.
Were just really awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, the moment you see Robert Downey Jr., it's like he's immediately Tony Stark. I mean, he looks almost exactly like Tony Stark in the comic books.
Yeah.
Like, which is just, I don't know, like, that's so weirdly perfect to me.
Yeah.
He literally looks exactly like Tony Stark in the comic books.
Yeah.
And then he acts exactly like Tony Stark in the comic books, too.
Yeah.
He's just like, that's just like the absolute perfect cast, and you can see that immediately in like the very first trailer.
Yes. I mean, what he does in the movie is he just commands the screen so strongly, and you even get that in like a 2-minute trailer, and that you never get something that strong out of a trailer. But yeah, I was really excited too. But you read Iron Man comics, I assume.
I wasn't a huge Iron Man guy, but I've read some of them, like some of the earlier ones, and then his appearance in like the Avengers and stuff.
Because I knew very little about Iron Man going into the movie.
Yeah, Iron Man to me is not like, the problem with Iron Man is that Iron Man himself is really, really interesting, but he doesn't have any very good villains, which actually comes across in the movies. Yeah. Because it's like, basically, most of his villains are just like evil Iron Mans.
And I like how they handled that in 2, and we'll talk about that later on. And I like how they handle it in 1, where they usually just go and make it a personal conflict rather than a big save the world one.
Yeah.
It's more interesting that way. But yeah. So, okay, the movie itself. I'll let you start. What are your thoughts on Iron Man?
Okay, well, I think immediately one of the things I do really like about Iron Man is that they update his origin, but they do it in the right way, where it's basically the exact same origin, but just taking place now. Yeah. And it's just it's really almost tragically convenient that it's like we've got almost the exact same situation, where in the original Iron Man comic books, his origin is he's in Vietnam, and then it's like the whole shrapnel thing in his heart, he gets captured by the Viet Cong, and then he has to make the robot suit and save himself. And this, instead, he's in Iraq. Or he's in Afghanistan. I don't remember which.
I don't even know if they named the country.
Yeah, but he's in some Middle Eastern country. And it's like, bomb goes off, shrapnel to the heart. They capture him, they make him work, and then he makes his Iron Man suit.
Yeah. And that allows the movie to feel both geopolitically intelligent and timely.
Yeah,
to a certain degree. It's aware of the world, and that helps it. It gives it this sort of subtextual underpinning that means a lot, I think.
Yeah, it's just so interesting that it's like it came about like that, where it's almost the exact same situation with like the exact same subtext,
right?
Like 30 or 40 years later.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you could update Captain America's origins, for instance, and have it be the same.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't do like Captain America today, because it's completely different scenarios.
Right. But with Iron Man, they could, and I think they took a good opportunity to do that. But
and I do appreciate that they were able to, with that, they got like the really lame old Iron Man suit, where it's just basically like, he just kind of looks like, he looks like how you think like an actual Iron Man would look like, where it's just like a bunch of iron plates kind of like welded together, just like in the vague shape of a person with like this like slit of the mouth and like slits of eyes. He's just like this big mess of iron with legs and arms.
I think we're talking about the origin. Let's just jump into that. I think the Iron Man movie, there's one Marvel movie I like more than Iron Man personally, but I think Iron Man handles the superhero origin story better than any other superhero movie I've ever seen, bar none.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, probably Iron Man is my favorite of the Marvel Studio movies. It's
very close.
Yeah, it's definitely in the top 2.
Yeah. And I just love how they handle it, and that Robert Downey Jr. is so good that they don't even have to spend that much time establishing who he is before they send him to the Middle East. Mm-hmm. It's just Robert Downey Jr. steps on screen and you know who Tony Stark is, and you get it that he is an asshole, but he's probably a good guy deep down.
Yeah, it's like he's an asshole, but he's probably going to do the right thing in the end.
Yeah, and I love that it is a moral play for him, and that I think the first act of the movie is so good with him learning to, he makes friends with the guy who's
the other scientist.
Yeah, the other scientist. Captured. And they make friends, and that guy sacrifices himself, and sort of by the time he leaves there, he's a changed man. and he comes back, and even though he's still recognizably Tony Stark, he has this moral drive to change his company, and it's a good character story more than anything else. And I think the way the rest of the movie handles that is really good, and it's just about a guy who's decided he has power in the world, and he realizes he has responsibility.
And then he's going to make a robot suit.
Yeah. So you got the cool stuff in there too, but yeah. And of course, I think they handled the villain pretty well. I like Jeff Bridges in the role. I think, considering that this movie is really more about Tony Stark's character than any sort of giant villain conflict, it's a good villain who can just be out of the way when you need him to be, and then come in for the final fight. And the final fight is less about that villain and the saving the world than it is about showing how much Tony Stark has changed. It does a good job at that. And then, I think it's got some third act difficulties there, but overall I do like the arc of the movie.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the very, the end of the movie is definitely the weakest part. Where that's actually kind of true for a lot of the Marvel Studio movies, where it's the final action conflict is not quite there, but usually the character conflicts are.
Although,
which is what carries the movie.
The way the movie actually ends, the last moment.
Oh, the very end is awesome.
Yes. No one expected that for the end of the movie. It was just awesome. He goes and says, "I am Iron Man," and you cut to credits, and it's we're going to have to wait 2 years to see more of that. It's great. I love it. But, so do you have any thoughts of just sort of the arc and the story of Iron Man, the movie?
I mean, I think they just nailed it perfectly, because it feels exactly like Iron Man. It really does feel like they just took the original origin story and brought it in to the modern world. Yeah. Just executed perfectly, except for the villains just kind of... But I mean, there's really nothing you can do with Iron Man in that department. It's just Iron Man just doesn't have cool villains.
Yeah.
It's
And I think the way, let's talk about it. I wanted to go character by character for this, so let's start with that character. Do you remember his name? Jeff Bridges' character?
Obadiah Stane.
Yeah, Obadiah Stane.
He's the Ironmonger.
Yeah.
Ironmongrel?
Ironmonger in the movie.
Monger.
Yeah.
There might be an Ironmongrel too in the comic books. Comic books are confusing.
Yeah.
So if I make a mistake, forgive me.
We will. But anyway, what I was going to say is I think Obadiah Stane is as good a villain as you could have for that story.
Yeah.
Because it's tied directly into Tony Stark's change, and that he's sort of the force, almost like the devil on his shoulder, trying to keep this company what it is. And it represents itself in a big action conflict at the end. And that's pretty, it works. And he's in the background. Jeff Bridges, I will never complain about the presence of the Big Lebowski in a movie.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges would make every movie better.
Yeah, probably.
He should be in every single movie. He should be like the Nolan North of actual movies.
Yes.
You should just sprinkle a little Jeff Bridges in there and it'll make it better.
Yes. All right. And so I like that character. The other big reason for me why this movie works is I think Gwyneth Paltrow is fantastic.
Yeah, Pepper Potts.
And their chemistry is just off the charts. It's fantastic. And I love that they have this chemistry and it's really good, and they resist the urge to make it romantic in the first movie. Just have them be friends, have there be a small amount of tension in there, and not have this sort of romantic tension having this shroud over the movie, which has destroyed so many other superhero films.
Yeah.
And they just let it play naturally, where at the end she still can be incredibly annoyed with him and respect him, and, he has nothing but respect for her, but is a 12-year-old at heart and has no way to show it.
And it's kind of interesting because most of the Iron Man comics that I have read, like Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan, I think is it Happy? There's also
Happy Hogan. Yeah,
there's another character in Daredevil that's almost like the exact. That's Foggy Nelson in Daredevil. They're both they're the exact same person, and they're played
by Jon Favreau.
Which is really weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, those characters aren't emphasized as much in the comic books that I've read, but I'm pretty sure they were in this weird era where there's this love triangle between the three of them.
Yeah.
And I think this I've never read any of those comic books, so I think it's kind of interesting that they really put a heavy emphasis on them to create that supporting cast that I wasn't even really aware of that Iron Man had before I'd seen the movie. I knew who Pepper Potts was, but I had no idea she was that important. And then when I looked into it, she's got a lot of history with Iron Man. So that's kind of cool that they were able to build out that supporting cast.
And I think Gwyneth Paltrow's performance and that character are such a breath of fresh air if you watch a lot of these movies, because it is a different dynamic and it's a different kind of character where she's not just there to be in danger and be saved. She's an actual strong female character at the heart of this movie. that was, and that's, you can describe the whole Iron Man movie that way. It's just a breath of fresh air. It's something different and new.
Yeah, and it's just like, and I mean, we didn't even say it, but it's like the Iron Man movie is just so entertaining too.
Yes.
Like even
It's
with all,
funny.
it's just such an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
Because Robert Downey Jr. is just so entertaining to watch. He's so funny.
Yeah.
He just owns the screen every time he's on there. Just like the script is really sharp.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just one of the most fun movies to watch.
Yeah. And let's talk about the other sort of main character is Colonel James Rhodes. Rhodey. And
he played Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard played him in the
yes,
first
I
one.
believe it's Terrence Howard. I almost said Terrence Stamp. That would be a very different guy.
General Zod. That'd be really weird. That'd be a strange casting.
Yes. Kneel before Rhodes. Anyway, yeah, it's Terrence Howard. And I really like Terrence Howard in this movie.
I am War Machine. You will kneel before me, Stark.
We will have more to talk about, I think, Terrence Howard and this character when we get to Iron Man 2. Mm-hmm. But what do you think of the character in the context of Iron Man 1?
He's fine. I don't remember... I don't think he was that important in Iron Man 1, as far as I remember. It's like, he was just kind of like... he was good. Yeah. He was just kind of like there as a supporting cast member and like as a friend to Tony. It's like it worked that.
And again, I think Robert Downey Jr. probably has good chemistry with everyone, but this was another good casting choice for the two of them. They just play off each other well. I love the scene where they're, Tony Stark gets to the airport like 3 hours late, and Rhodes is still standing there, at attention like a soldier would. And they go in, and Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark has the stripper pole raising out of the floor, and Rhodes is completely uncomfortable with it, and it's very funny.
Yeah, like Rhodey is another character that I'm a lot more familiar with him as War Machine than I am like in the comic books. He's not like a really huge character in the comic books, so that's another one that like his comic book history I'm not that aware of. All I know is that he becomes War Machine. He's kind of a villain for a while, and he's kind of not, and he's basically a hero.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Iron Man. Any other thoughts?
Iron Man.
Yes. I should note, the special effects are fantastic.
Yeah, the special effects are really awesome in Iron Man.
And I love the scene. My favorite just scene with him in the costume is probably when he's, just experimenting with it. And I didn't even talk about that. The world they build in his lab. That's amazing. I love that with Jarvis.
And they had the Jarvis as an AI. Yeah. It's like, I kind of wish they had kept he's just his butler. And he's basically Alfred, but he's Jarvis. Yeah. And so I kind of wish that they had kept like stuffy old British Jarvis, but it's okay that he's an AI.
And just sort of all the technology and stuff, it's just, and Robert Downey Jr. having, again, chemistry with just his cars and his technology and his robot friends, who I love the scene near the end where, like, they lift his heart and bring it to him, and he's like, I'm not going to destroy you now. It's like, aw, he likes the little robot arm now, and he was so mean to it before.
Yeah, it's like, some of the best scenes in the Iron Man movies are just him in his lab, and it's like, they do make, like Jarvis is a character, and then, like, kind of the lab itself is a character.
So... All right, so that's Iron Man. A couple months later, so Iron Man comes out in May. In June, just about 1 month later, the next Marvel Studios movie comes out, and this is The Incredible Hulk.
Man, it came out that soon after?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Well, Sean, should you say really quickly, you did not see this movie?
Yeah, I didn't see it for the longest time, and I have no idea why. It's just like I didn't see it in the theater. It's like it just completely snuck down. I mean, it must have been because it came so soon after Iron Man that I never saw it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about here, because this is the only one... It was not a financial failure. It did better than the first Hulk movie, but it's the only Marvel Studios movie that you can't say is an unqualified success.
Yeah.
And I think the timing was the problem. If they should have just held it for May of 2009, where they had no Marvel movie.
Yeah, then I probably would have seen it in the theater if they had done that.
Made it an event, because as it stands, it just felt like it was the follow-up to Iron Man, or like the little brother or something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't marketed nearly as much. People were still riding the Iron Man high, and like you just said, you just overlooked it.
It's a shame, because I like Hulk. Yeah. Like comic book Hulk. I like him way more than Iron Man. I love the Hulk.
Yeah. And, so, and I think...
I love the Hulk so much that I actually saw the shitty Hulk movie twice. It's so long ago that I still don't even remember that well.
Yeah. But no, I go to review all these movies, so that's why I saw The Incredible Hulk, obviously. But it is sort of interesting that this is the sort of little forgotten sibling of the Marvel Studios universe, and it sort of will always be that way because Edward Norton is not playing the character in Avengers.
Yeah, which is
odd. But let's talk about the movie itself, because I think it is an important addition to the canon. I really like it. It's probably my least favorite of the Marvel Studios movies.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's not bad by any means.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie. It's still a fun movie to watch.
Like, I like it a lot.
If you have nothing else to do, it's like if you just have like an evening and you have nothing else to do, I would totally rent The Incredible Hulk and watch it if you haven't seen it.
A little bit of history. Universal made the first Hulk movie with Ang Lee as the director, and I think it was Eric Banta as Bruce
Eric
Banner.
Bana. I have no idea how to say his name.
Right.
I always want to say Banner because it's Bruce Banner's the character.
Right. That movie nobody liked, and it tanked and set actually a box office record for biggest second weekend drop. Which is notable, but so the rights reverted back to Marvel. They make The Incredible Hulk, and it has no relation whatsoever to the first movie, except they skip the origin story, but they present it in a really cool opening credits sequence, and they even sort of change it a little bit from how because it's presented really convolutedly in the Ang Lee version. So they just simplify it to he's a scientist, he's working on this formula.
Yeah, it's like I don't even remember because I just know it's not the. Because the comic book origin for the Hulk is actually really lame, and he creates a character that's completely excluded in all the Hulk stuff. It's kind of a shame because I like the character, but in the comic books, how the Hulk gets made is basically they're testing gamma bombs, which aren't a thing, and then and they're like in the middle of nowhere in like Arizona or Nevada or wherever, and like this stupid teenage, it's like the 50s, and so the stupid teenage kid is like in his hot rod and he's like driving on, and he like drives into the test area, and Bruce Banner's the only one who sees him, and so he runs out when the test is about to go off. Instead of just stopping the test, I don't even remember why he doesn't stop the test. There must be some reason why he can't. And he goes, and he gets the kid, and like he protects the kid, but he gets attacked by gamma ray particles. Gamma rays are actual things, but the way they're presented in the comic book is like he would have just been vaporized if he got hit by actual gamma rays. And that mutates him. And so, in the comic books, most of the comics that I've read of the really old Silver Age ones is basically Bruce Banner going around with the kid, kind of protects him and helps him.
That's weird.
Because he just turns into the Hulk and he can't stop himself from turning into the Hulk. So, like, the kid, and so he's trying to figure out how to stop himself from turning into the Hulk, and the military's after him, and the kid's trying to help him, like, keeping him on the down low, and then, like, random aliens and stuff, and, like, communists will pop up, and the Hulk fights those.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. But it's like the core Hulk experience to me has always been the Hulk on the run, the military trying to find him, and him trying to figure out what's happening to him as the Hulk, and trying to stop that.
That's what I like about
that's what that's what the movie's about. I like that.
Let's do a little synopsis. It just starts with him on the run. He's in the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, and I think that's exactly how a Hulk movie should start. You don't need the origin or anything. It's not like Iron Man. That's not the big important part of his story. That's just how he got in this scenario. Now the interesting part of the Hulk is what he does after he becomes the Hulk, and so that's what this movie's about. He's on the run. General Ross.
Thunderbolt Ross.
Thunderbolt Ross. I'm always conflicted because of that story I wrote, the Incredible Hulk meets Batman, where I called him. I wrote it as like a drunk fanboy. It was a parody of fan fiction, and so I called him Thunder Lightning Bolt Ross, and I can never remember which one it is.
The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. It was a funny story. Anyway, Ross is on his trail. He meets, is it Betty?
Yeah, Betty Ross is his daughter.
He meets up with Betty Ross, and in the process of all this, it is Tim Roth, who the actor, and he becomes
Hulk is another one that has no good villains.
Yeah, it's Abomination.
And then they also have the guy with the huge head.
Yeah, it's played like Tim Blake Nelson. But
I want to call him the Gargoyle, but he's not the Gargoyle.
Yeah, well, you know what? Why don't I just
because the Gargoyle's a communist. He's the Red Gargoyle.
Yes. So
and he has monkeys that help him.
We are looking up the cast right now, because we're bad at these names. It's Tim Roth is Emil Blonsky, who becomes the Abomination, and Tim Blake Nelson is Samuel Stearns, who becomes
leader. Oh, he's leader. Okay,
yeah, and you see him start to become the leader at the end of the movie, but they're probably never going to follow that up. So anyway, so that's sort of the general arc. Is it's really just a good story of Bruce Banner on the run, and it stars. We haven't even mentioned this yet. It's Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, and to me, that's why the movie works. I really like Edward Norton as Bruce Banner.
I'm not a huge I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was a great Bruce Banner.
It's not like it's not to the level of like I love Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Hemsworth, but
I think he's probably the weakest out of all because I think with the Marvel Studio movies, what makes them really good is the main cast is really solid, like the main character especially, because that's what Marvel, like that's what drives comic books is the main character is so great. It's not like the plots that are really awesome, and I think Edward Norton's a good Bruce Banner, but he isn't Bruce Banner. It's like it's not quite where all the other ones. It's like like Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark.
Chris Hemsworth is Thor.
Yeah.
You can't see any other Thor. I agree with that, and I just think he's good, and I think he drives the movie very well. But I actually am. I would be surprised if Mark Ruffalo is not a better Hulk. He just seems like the right actor for that to me.
It's like to me, I think the thing that Edward Norton never just quite seemed. Like, he kind of got the angsty thing right, but he never seemed like he was a genius to me. I think it's like he didn't... It's like he got the Bruce Banner, but he didn't get the Doctor.
Okay. So that's him, and let's just go through all the characters and talk about the cast a little bit, because it's hard to talk about the story arc of this movie.
Because there's not a huge... It's pretty simple. It's just basically he's on the run.
Which is what I like about it. It's just a good, simple Hulk setup. But Liv Tyler is Elizabeth Betty Ross. Liv Tyler is an interesting actress in that she's good in Lord of the Rings because she does exactly what is asked of her as Arwen, and she fits that world perfectly. And then I don't think I've ever seen a performance outside of the Lord of the Rings that I like her in.
I'm sure it's like I don't even particularly. I didn't remember that she played Betty.
Yeah. She's not in the movie much, but she's okay. But like, this is one area where this movie is actually weaker than the original Ang Lee Hulk. Is that had Jennifer Connelly as Betty Ross, and Jennifer Connelly is brilliant, and she just really exuded that genius thing that you could see Bruce Banner being attracted to. And she's really interesting, and I kind of wish they would have just kept her. And I know it would have messed with continuity and stuff, but anyway.
Yeah, it's like nobody would have cared.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you have any memory of Liv Tyler in the movie?
Not particularly. Like, I just kind of remember that Betty, like, that was part of the movie, because you have to have Betty in it, but I didn't remember that it was Liv Tyler at all.
Tim Roth, I liked as Emil Blonsky. I mean, he's a good actor. Good to see him working. I wish he would go back to doing Quentin Tarantino movies. But, no, I thought Emil Blonsky was not a fascinating villain or anything, but a good one.
I mean, it's kind of like with Iron Man. It's like Hulk just, like, all of his villains are evil Hulks, basically. I mean, that's Abomination is just an evil Hulk. That's it.
And I think
he should have fought the Red Gargoyle, the communist.
Yeah. But that
made sense. But that's what it should have been.
Yeah, but that's what Tim Roth brings to the movie, is that I think he's just.
Did you just call him Tim Broth?
I was Blonsky Roth. I'm sorry, Tim Roth. Yeah, Tim Roth makes a character who could have been very bland interesting to me.
Yeah, it's like he was. A fine character, like a fine villain.
And probably the best bit of casting to me is I think William Hurt is an interesting Ross, General Ross.
Yeah, he definitely isn't the kind of person who you would think to cast as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross.
But he was interesting. I liked him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to muster too much enthusiasm for this movie. I've always described it as one that I love. I enjoy watching it, but I don't really think about it when I'm done with it. It's not hugely entertaining in the way Iron Man or Thor or Captain America is. It's just, I think, and I think the biggest problem I would identify with it is that this is the only one where you look at like the director and the people involved, and it seems more of just a generic studio creation. The director was Louis Leterrier, who Louis Leterrier, and his other claims to fame are the Transporter movies and the Clash of the Titans remake. He's not a director with a strong voice. He's a studio director. And The Incredible Hulk does in some ways come across as more of just a studio creation rather than someone with a strong voice coming in and taking a strong take on the material.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really weird because the most memorable part of the movie is something that I had a complete misconception about. And I kind of knew it was wrong, but I saw it after I'd watched Thor because I was like, I need to catch up because I'd never seen The Incredible Hulk, so it's like I need to watch that before I eventually see the Avengers, and I really liked Thor. And Thor has a really cool moment in it where it has a really cool cameo. And I was like, oh, that's really awesome. And so I was watching The Incredible Hulk, and there's a part in it really early on where he's on the computer, and he's like on an internet chat board, and he's talking to someone, and Bruce Banner's name is Mr. Green on the chat board. And the other person, like this other doctor who's trying to help him out with like the gamma ray poisoning thing, his screen name is Mr. Blue. And I thought that was supposed to be Reed Richards, because it's like it's Fantastic Four, that's like their identifying color is blue. They're blue and white. So it's like I went through the movie and I'm like, was that supposed to be Reed Richards? Because they don't bring it up for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then it just ends up being the leader guy. I don't even remember
Samuel Stearns.
I'm vaguely aware of who the leader is. He's not like a big character. I was like, they should have just left it really kind of vague and let me pretend that it had been Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Because that would have been, because that's one of the things that happens all the time in the Marvel Universe, is you just get like Reed Richards, Dr. Banner, like Dr. Pym, Tony Stark, they'll just get together and talk about like random technobabble stuff for like 5 pages. And that's how like half like the big problems in the Marvel Universe get solved. And so I was just like, that would have been way cooler if they just left it ambiguously Reed Richards instead of being like a setup for the villain for the next movie that they're probably never going to make.
Right. So, I mean, do you have any other thoughts on Incredible Hulk?
They should have made the Hulk talk.
Okay.
That's one thing I do not get it. I do not know why the Hulk never freaking talks in the Hulk movies.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, they haven't shown anything in the Avengers. I think I talked about this when we talked about the Avengers trailer.
Yeah.
It's like, the Hulk, as far as I'm aware, he's always talked. Like, in the early comic books, he always talked. He talked immediately, because he I mean, it's like he didn't talk a lot, and he didn't say anything, like, particularly intelligent or grammatically correct, but he could still talk, because the original Incredible Hulk is basically supposed to be the Frankenstein monster. I mean, he looks like the Frankenstein monster. Right. He was originally gray. And so it's like, and he's just always talked. And in the Incredible Hulk movie, they did, at like the very end, I think he says Hulk smash.
Yeah.
And they like, so they kind of build up to this like, oh, he can say Hulk smash. And it's like, that's kind of cute. But it's like, without the Hulk being able to talk, you don't get a real sense of the Hulk's character. And the Hulk himself needs to have a character distinct from Bruce Banner. And that's what makes the dichotomy interesting. And they never really, in the movies, he's just a huge brute who has no real motivations. Yeah. Except for like one sad scene in a rainstorm that's like in both of the movies. Yeah. Like he's like, oh, this is really sad. It's like, oh, I'm protecting Betty because Bruce Banner's somewhere deep in my heart. Yeah. But like the Hulk needs to talk a little bit just to get his character across. And I really hope he talks some in the Avengers. Because if he doesn't, we're not really going to get a sense of how he works with the team, I think.
Well, while you were saying that, I just jumped on Wikipedia and looked at the Avengers page to see if they say anything about a voice. All they say is that Lou Ferrigno will provide the voice of the Hulk in the Avengers. He did that. He's credited for that in Incredible Hulk 2. So maybe Lou Ferrigno is just coming in to do grunts and stuff. I don't know. But, I don't know. They've got a guy who's doing a voice, so maybe.
So hopefully there's like at least a little bit. Like I said, it doesn't need to be a lot, but he needs to... Yeah, I think he needs to be able to communicate some stuff, unless they do it really well. They have to do it like King Kong, like Peter Jackson's King Kong caliber of to get his character across.
And I will say, they are using the same motion capture system used on King Kong and Avatar, and Mark Ruffalo is doing the motion capture, so it's still that performer doing the part.
So maybe because like that's one of the problems with I think them trying to translate the Hulk into the movies, is that they just never got the Hulk right. Yeah. Hulk never felt really like a distinct character.
And I think this is a question worth asking now that we're done talking about the Incredible Hulk, the movie. How do we view the Incredible Hulk movie in this canon, given that from now on it's going to be Mark Ruffalo playing the character?
I mean, there's really no reason to think it's not canonical with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it's like, because it doesn't really, nothing in the movie happens of like huge significance. Right.
But I mean, they've got, Mark Ruffalo signed on. He's going to do a standalone Hulk movie or two after the Avengers.
Is he? I haven't heard about that.
They're planning that, and I mean, the whole plan is that they're going to do an Avengers 2, but before then, each of the characters is going to get us another sequel. In case of Iron Man, it'll be 3. In the case of everyone else, it will be 2. But does Mark Ruffalo's movie count as another new Hulk start, or is it sort of going to be a follow-up? I think you said it best, is just that because of the rambling nature of the character, or wandering, the canon isn't as important there.
Yeah, it's like
if you're doing this with Thor, it would be a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even if it is a sequel, it's like nothing huge happens in the first movie. Yeah. I think, it's going to be a problem because they're going to have to, they're probably going to have to recast Betty and Thunderbolt Ross and like all the side characters. Yeah. And so they're probably going to have to reestablish the relationships in the new movies. But that's probably a good thing because they need to do that. Yeah,
and I do think Mark Ruffalo is the best casting for the character so far. In theory, I like Mark Ruffalo a lot. And he's done roles like Bruce Banner, someone who's sort of tortured inside, and dealing with that, and that's good. And if he can nail sort of the professor-doctor side of it that you were talking about, I think he'll be perfect for it. And more important, the one thing that fills me with confidence is Joss Whedon was allowed to cast the character personally for Avengers and did auditions with the other three for chemistry reasons. So that's probably going to work, and that'll be good. Because the one thing about Edward Norton I will say is I could never imagine him working with the other three actors well.
Yeah, that doesn't really. Yeah, that really doesn't. No. I can't see that in my head at all.
But when you look at him in the trailers for Avengers, Mark Ruffalo, it just seems like that looks right.
Yeah.
So, I like the part where Tony Stark comes up to him and makes fun of him, as he will be doing a lot of in the Avengers, hopefully.
Yep.
That's his main superpower in the group, making fun of everyone else.
I mean, that might be, maybe that is his his actual superpower, because he just wears a robot suit. Maybe he really is a mutant. And his real superpower is to make fun of people. Marvel, get on that.
Yes. All right. Speaking of Tony Stark, the next Marvel movie, this is 2 years later, and this is 2010. And, we didn't even mention this. The whole Avengers project hadn't even been announced, and it was a surprise at the end of Iron Man 1.
Yeah, they had a little scene with Samuel L. Jackson at the very end.
And he mentions the Avengers Initiative, and people, I remember I was there opening night, people lost their shit for that scene. It was like, oh my god! It was awesome.
Was that your impression of people losing their shit?
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Apparently all those people lost their voice.
Here's a weird tidbit about Incredible Hulk. Yeah, here's a weird tidbit about Incredible Hulk. All these movies have those post-credits tags. For some reason, the post-credit tag in Incredible Hulk, which is where Tony Stark comes in and talks to Ross, they put it before the credits, and it's really awkward, because the movie ends, they fade to black for 5 seconds, and then they have the tag, and then they do the credits. It's really weird. I
remember that. Yeah, that is really strange.
It's a fun scene, but yeah.
I wonder if that means that William Hurt will return as General Thunderbolt Ross.
Who knows? All right, so the next movie is Iron Man 2. This came out on May 7th, 2010, so this is 2 years later. You excited for this movie too?
Yeah. Absolutely. Iron Man 1 was awesome.
Yeah, Iron Man 2 trailers were really good.
They had a lot of every single Iron Man 2 trailer had a different AC/DC song.
Yeah,
it was great. They were all awesome.
So let's talk about Iron Man 2. I think there's been a lot of backlash against this movie, and I understand it, but I don't agree with it.
I think it's really disproportionate to have the backlash is really disproportionate to the movie itself.
The movie itself, there's no denying Iron Man 2 is a messy film. There are problems in it. There are things they could have done better.
And it's definitely inferior to Iron Man 1.
I will say that. But I love it. I don't know if I love it, but I love watching it. It is an entertaining movie.
I think a lot of the backlash is just kind of
nitpicky.
Yeah, it's really nitpicky. It's just because Iron Man 1 was so good, and Iron Man 2 isn't quite to that level.
Yeah. Well, what it is I think there's a lot of stuff in Iron Man 2 I actually like better than 1. Some of how they advance the relationships, some of the stuff they do with Tony. There's so much I like about Iron Man 2, and I don't know if it coalesces into a completely cohesive whole.
It's just not as strong as a whole movie, but I actually think a lot of the individual aspects are stronger than in Iron Man 1, but in Iron Man 1, it's just it's a more complete film.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. So the villain plot of Iron Man 2, which is again mainly in the background, is Whiplash is your sort of core villain this time.
And they combine Whiplash with Crimson Dynamo. Yeah. So it's in Crimson Dynamo is just he's a communist Iron Man. Yeah. So
okay. We're not missing a whole lot there.
Yeah, no. I mean, once again, Iron Man just does not have interesting villains. Actually, his main evil villain is the Mandarin, who has magic powers. So I don't know if they're ever going to end up doing the Mandarin, because he's got 10 rings with magic powers.
They've just announced Ben Kingsley will be the villain in Iron Man 3.
Oh my god, maybe
they are. Because Ben Kingsley does he's an Englishman who plays a lot of Asian characters for some reason. Or Middle Eastern anyway. I like Ben Kingsley though. So anyway, but that also continues Iron Man's pattern in these movies of only fighting old white men. So, Whiplash is played by Mickey Rourke. He wants revenge because Tony's father, played by Roger from Mad Men, John Slattery, stole his ideas or something, right?
Yeah, stole his father's ideas to make, the arc reactor thing.
Yeah. And he wants revenge, which, hey, you want a good villain, give him a revenge motive. It works. It just does. And so he's there in the background. I like Mickey Rourke in the role. He's good. Mm-hmm. He's not a hugely interesting villain. The real villain of the movie, though, is actually
Sam Rockwell as
oh god, as Justin Hammer.
Justin Hammer.
I love this character.
To me, Sam Rockwell's the real villain in the movie. And
that's what's interesting.
He's the best. Like, he's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie.
Yeah.
I love Sam Rockwell.
He's a great actor.
There's this scene in like the climax where they're at the Stark Expo, and he comes on stage, and Justin Hammer he dances onto the stage, and it's just like I just love that whole scene.
And I love his relationship with the Mickey Rourke character. And it's a lot of good content, and I like Justin Hammer is a villain you can kind of relate to because he's so frustrated. And
because I think it's really interesting because I don't know if this has been done in the comic books that much, but it's like he's not an evil Iron Man, he's an evil Tony Stark. And I think that's a lot more interesting than just having an evil robot.
So that's what I like about it, and that's why I don't always buy into the comments about, the final fight with them and Whiplash isn't long enough. Well, maybe, but I don't view Whiplash as the main villain, so it's okay
not
for
really.
me. He's just an obstacle. Mm-hmm. They overcome him, and, the main obstacle is Justin Hammer, and I would say the biggest problem with Iron Man 2 is it's structurally unsound, where you have the Sam Rockwell plot completely separate from the Tony Stark one until the end of the movie. That's a little awkward, but I like everything within those two stories.
Yeah, and I think when I remember the movie, I think it's like it feels like the movie's almost like it feels like it's too long, but like a lot of events are really kind of drawn out because you've got like all the stuff where he like goes to the racetrack, and it's like when you introduce Whiplash, and then he has all the stuff where he's getting poisoned, and then he has backlash against Don Cheadle, and then he has to like invent the new element or whatever that's completely impossible to do. It's like as a whole thing with Nick Fury. It's like these really long string of events that don't exactly feel like they really come together to a conclusion because it's like the Justin Hammer thing comes out of nowhere. Yeah,
but
the conclusion.
But again, I like every step on that journey.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the Iron Man story. Again, we were talking about this with the first movie. The main thing they do with Tony Stark is just a good character story for him. And again, I like that this is one where he's going through a personal crisis. Robert Downey Jr. is really good at illustrating that. And it's just sort of interesting him on this self-destructive path where his enemy in the movie is himself and overcoming sort of his own demons and stuff. Yeah. And it's an interesting plot. And I mean, what else do you want to say about that story? It's interesting how they bring in Marvel lore into it, like his father and the Stark Expo, which comes back in Captain America, and he finds the shield, and my phone's going off. Sorry about that. Okay.
And then I have to say, I like Don Cheadle as Rhodey a lot more than Terrence Howard. I mean, he's given a lot more in the movie, and I think that's another one of my favorite parts of the movie is just kind of their relationship with each other and how how strained it becomes, but you can see that they're still really good friends.
Right. I do like the stuff with Rhodey. I think it's good material. I think it's a good story. I like that we get to War Machine, and it feels really satisfying when they come together and team up. Mm-hmm. I'm not as hot on Don Cheadle as you are for this movie.
I mean, I didn't say I was hot on Don Cheadle. Don't phrase it like that. I mean, I think the guy's a good actor, but whoa.
Okay. No. I'm not as sold on Don Cheadle. Is that better? Yeah. I thought he was good in the movie, but I don't know. He seemed like he kind of lacked energy to me in the role. He just didn't seem to have much enthusiasm for it.
I think for me, the thing that I would criticize Don Cheadle the most for is that Don Cheadle doesn't seem like someone who would be in the military. It's like that's really what the most distracting thing. But it's to me that's not as big an element. I don't think he's I think he kind of lacks energy, but I think it's more that Rhodey doesn't really have that much energy.
Terrence Howard to me sort of popped off the screen in a way Don Cheadle in this role doesn't, but I would have to watch them again. It's been a while since I've watched 2, and I have nothing against Cheadle. He's a great actor, and maybe if they give him even more to do, he can really improve it even more. But I do like all the material with that. Like their fight in at Tony's birthday party is interesting. Mm-hmm. And I do like the whole downward spiral. Robert Downey Jr. is still very appealing, but I like that they, in the second movie, allow him to go to a darker place with the character. All the stuff with Gwyneth Paltrow is still good, and understandably, she's very mad at him for the whole movie. Yeah. So there's a lot of good material there. A lot of good banter. Like I've read that a lot of their banter is improvised.
No,
and
really.
it comes across well. It just feels natural. And I will tell you who my favorite part of the movie is I think Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow is awesome. She's only in the movie for 15 minutes, but I really love every scene with her.
Do you want to say why? Are there particular reasons?
She's a beautiful woman. I will. Look, I'm not gonna lie.
You just like get right to it.
I'm not gonna lie.
Just like,
that is a component, and I feel like I would be disingenuous if I didn't admit that that is part of why I think she's awesome in the movie. But more importantly than that, Scarlett Johansson.
That's why.
Scarlett Johansson does have a nice. Never mind. That's not what I was talking about. God, you're pushing me into this, and that's not what I was saying. More importantly, I was going to say Scarlett Johansson is an actress who I kind of go back and forth between liking and disliking her performances. She's been good in several Woody Allen films, bad in several other films, and I think she's just a good screen presence in this movie and a good sort of superhero presence. I like her sort of attitude towards Tony Stark, where she just doesn't put up with his bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's a different dynamic than we've had in these movies so far, because even Pepper Potts puts up with it to a certain degree. And I like, especially when you get to the halfway point of the movie and you find out she's really Natasha Romanoff, and she doesn't have to pretend with Tony Stark anymore. And I like that idea of a background character from the Marvel Universe who's just sort of there and doesn't have to be an integral part of the movie, but you can just have fun with the character. And I think the best action sequence in the movie is her takedown of the guards at the end of the movie. That's, to me, is the most thrilling part of Iron Man 2.
Yeah, I do really like that whole sequence where like she's in the car with Happy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I love that whole. Just like, I agree. I do really like. I think Scarlett Johansson's a really good Natasha. Like, I don't think she was quite as. Like, I think she could have been better, but she wasn't really given that much. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't have a huge read on how they're going to treat Black Widow. I think that's really what I'm saying.
Well,
it's like, I don't know how they're going to go with that character. So I'm like,
and I know Joss Whedon has said he was very excited to work with that character because he wanted to, he's really good at writing female characters, and he wanted to make sure he sort of fleshed her out as a three-dimensional character in the Avengers.
Because Black Widow is a really, really complex character. Like,
okay.
Mostly just because when you have a character that's a secret agent that like you make comic books for, like for over the course of 40 years, there's a lot of like, so she's betraying these people, or is she really with these people? No, she's betraying those people now, and she's with these people and betraying those people at the same time that she's with them. So it's like, she's a really confusing character if you try to follow her character history in the comic books. So it's like, I'm kind of just curious about where they're going to go with that. I would not be surprised if Black Widow turns out to be a traitor at some point in the Avengers.
Okay.
Just going to say that right now.
I hope not.
She's a Russian, so there you go. I mean, she started.
Sean, we're not at war with the Russians
I'm pretty sure she started out as a villain.
Okay.
That was actually a hero, but was really a villain. That ended up being a hero that was actually a villain.
Okay. But no, and you talk about complexity there. I think one of the things she does well in this movie is how it's just hard to get a read on her, and I like that. I like that she's a mysterious force in this movie, and I think Scarlett Johansson does a good job suggesting backstory or motivation without us ever drawing attention to it. And she's just, to me, an intriguing character, and that's what I like about her in the movie. And it feels sort of comic booky in that way, where it doesn't have to be an element that is 100% in keeping with what the movie's about. It's just a thing that comes in from another part of the universe to sort of hang out for this story. And I like that. And I'm excited to see where they go from there. So that's all the characters. And again, this is a movie so character-based, that's really how you have to analyze it, I think.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to say about Iron Man 2?
Samuel L. Jackson had a much bigger part.
He's great.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that they decided to go with the Ultimates Nick Fury, who's based on Samuel L. Jackson, so they got Samuel L. Jackson.
He's fantastic.
I really like him. I think that's an interesting choice that seems like it's panning out pretty well. Yeah. It looks like he's going to have a lot more to do in the Avengers. So
I love the shot in the trailer of him coming out with a bazooka in the Avengers. That'd be fun. I had one other thing I want to say about Iron Man 2 that was a disappointment for me. The first film was scored by a composer named Ramin Djawadi, I believe is his name. He currently scores the HBO series Game of Thrones, and I really liked the score for Iron Man 1. It had a lot of techno stuff in it, and it was sort of industrial in that way, and it just had a lot of energy, and I really liked it. It was different, and that's what was part of what was original about Iron Man was the music to me. And Iron Man 2, other than the moments where they use AC/DC, has really boring music.
I don't particularly remember the music from either of the movies.
Okay. It's John Debney who composes Iron Man 2, and he's a composer you get when you are out of time and you need someone to come in and do a generic action score. And that's all you get in the movie. It's just a very generic action score. They don't even bring any of the themes back from Iron Man 1. So that, to me, was a disappointment. Not a huge one, but it's worth noting. It just means to me Iron Man 2 has a little less energy than it could have. And really, they hyped all the AC/DC stuff. They only used it at the beginning and end. And I think they could have done more in the middle. Just for fun.
You can't use too much AC/DC. Okay. There's such a thing as too much AC/DC.
Yeah. All right.
You can't make the entire soundtrack to the movie Power Chords. That's all I'm saying.
Not the whole movie, but yeah. All right. So that's Iron Man 2. The next movie, so this is flash forward to last summer, 2011. We're getting another Marvel double feature, Thor and Captain America. They did a much better job marketing the movies this time, so neither was overshadowed by the other. And I'm going to let you talk about Thor in a second. But first, I want to say a sincere apology to anyone associated with Thor who may have been insulted by the slightly negative review I wrote when Thor first came out.
I remember you.
I now love Thor. I gave it a B- when it came out. And I questioned some things of it. And I read that review and I don't understand. And this happens once in a while for every critic, where you watch so many movies, once in a while you have an opinion, you watch the movie again, you have a completely different opinion, and you don't know how that happened. That's what happened with me and Thor. I saw it once, wrote a review, put it out, saw it again, loved the friggin' hell out of it, and wanted to go back and rewrite that review.
That's good. That's good, because Thor is a good movie.
Yes, and Sean... Actually, in between there, I told Sean I didn't like Thor that much. He said, really? And we talked about it, and Sean gave me all these sort of talking points, and I thought about it in the context of the movie, and I was like, you know what, now I'm kind of starting to like it, and that's why I went to see it again, and yeah, so that happens from time to time. I'm sad it happened to Thor, because I really do like this movie, and I'm going to let Sean take it now.
Okay.
How excited were you for a Thor movie in 2010?
I wasn't hugely, I didn't think that Thor was going to be good.
Okay.
I was like, this is probably not going to be a great movie. I didn't think the box art for this. He has the DVD right now, and it's like the box art is really dark. It's like it's all black and red.
Yeah, this is the actual box art. He's looking at the slip cover, which was a Best Buy exclusive, and it's just Chris Hemsworth staring at you. And
it's like this blood red color. Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
that looks like it's to a completely different movie.
I know.
That looks like it's like some like Japanese movie about like samurai and ninjas, and it's like the entire movie's like basically just covered in blood.
And he has to get revenge for someone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways.
Thor.
But yeah, it's like, because to me, it's like Thor seems like it's such a hard character to do, because it's, in the comic books, is one of the more complex, like, just because Thor inhabits a whole universe of his own.
Yeah.
And still inhabits the Marvel universe. It's kind of like with X-Men, where it's like the X-Men usually don't involve themselves that much in the Marvel universe. They kind of like go off and do their own things, but they're still a part of it. And Thor's kind of like that, where it's like, after a while, he basically only hung out in Asgard, and it was all basically Asgardian stuff, and he's basically just Thor. But he started out as he was like Dr. Donald Blake, and then there were aliens, and then he went to a cave and he found a stick, and then he hit the stick on the wall, and it was like, it was the hammer of Thor. And he got the power of the gods, as you do, and then he fought aliens. And I'm pretty sure it was aliens. It's like, you can just basically guess comic books at that time. If it's not an actual villain, they were just aliens there for no reason whatsoever. And that version of Thor is incredibly lame, where he's like Dr. Donald Blake, but he's also Thor. And so I'm really glad they went with him just being Thor, the god.
Yeah.
I think they basically allude to it in the movie. They're really aliens. It's like they don't ever actually come out and say it, but they're like, yeah, they're aliens because
they're from another dimension.
Yeah. No, I don't think they say they're from another dimension. I think they're somewhere out in space because they go through a wormhole, an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
As
Portman says.
Yes.
It's like, actually, that was like, as I watched the movie with my dad, and in the very beginning of the movie, it's like, or not the very beginning, but at some point in the movie, Natalie Portman and her crew are out, investigating, meteorological phenomena. And at one point, Natalie Portman is they're studying this thing, and she's like, it's an Einstein-Rosen bridge. And right with that, my dad says, what's that? As Kat Dennings' character on the screen says, what's that? And I'm like, it's a wormhole. Right when Natalie Portman says it's a wormhole, it's like,
that's great.
It's like, I just really love that moment.
I can imagine that too. You and your dad watching the movie, it bouncing around in this triangle. No, I agree that Thor had to be a hard movie to make, and the number one praise I will give Thor is it looks effortless, the final product.
Yeah,
you don't feel the strain that they had to have had in adapting Thor, in Thor the movie. There are moments that I think are messy to it, but they're not related to how difficult it is to do Thor. It's more like, does Kat Dennings really need to be there at this moment?
Yeah.
Or
your character's pretty annoying.
Yeah, and I like Kat Dennings, actually. She's not necessarily a Marvel movies actress.
Yeah, it's just like her character just kind of...
Yeah.
It feels like a character that would be in a Michael Bay movie, kind of. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah. But I think Thor is up there among the best superhero origin stories because... And this goes back to the choice of director. They chose Kenneth Branagh, who's a famous Shakespearean director, to do this, and he does lend it that Shakespearean authenticity, and that it's a unique voice for a superhero movie, and that's what Marvel has discovered that you need, is a unique voice to do the movie. Kenneth Branagh definitely has one. It comes through loud and clear, and it gives weight to this universe of Asgard, and then in relation to Earth too, where it's not campy when he gets to Earth. It's still got that weight, I think. Sort of this Shakespearean love story too, where it's in a sense underdeveloped, but it still works because you've got good actors doing pretty good material, and a good, a basic sort of Shakespearean sort of story of good and evil between Thor and his brother Loki, which we'll talk about because that's phenomenally done. But where these two characters who sort of have good and bad within themselves and are grappling for it, and one of them succumbs to it and one of them doesn't. And it's a very good dichotomy there, and I think that's why the movie succeeds. Do you want to talk about the story or the casting and characters first?
Let's do the characters.
Okay, I think Chris Hemsworth is every bit as good of casting for Thor as Robert Downey Jr. was for Iron Man.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like he's like I was saying, it's like the most important thing in the movies is getting the main character, getting the hero right, and Chris Hemsworth just inhabits Thor.
It's the moment he steps on screen, he is so entertaining to watch, and I love that his really egotistical material at the beginning, where he just is so full of himself, and how he's humbled. He sells the transformation really well, but always you believe this guy is a god. Yeah, and that's got to be just as difficult as embodying someone like Tony Stark. It's it's a different kind of character, and he really sells it.
And what I really like is that he does feel like a god, but he definitely feels like a Norse god, where it's like he's really arrogant and he's really full of himself. But you just love the guy. Yeah. He's just so lovable. Yeah. Especially when he gets down to Earth and he's like interacting with all the Earthlings, and he's just like kind of having fun, and he's like getting beer, and it's like, bring me more, winch, and he like throws it on the ground and shatters the glass. It's like there's you wouldn't think that Thor's a funny movie, but it's a really funny movie because Chris Hemsworth the character is so likable, and he just like feels like he's like this like really great warrior that's just so used to just having like partying all night long with his like brethren.
And that's the scene I was going to reference, though, is when you did the, bring me another wench, and he throws it on the ground. That, to me, defines what Chris Hemsworth does well, is that joke could have gone south so easily. Because at its base, it's sort of a cheap joke, but he sells it with this Norse authenticity, and you believe that he would do this. Yeah, and it's great.
And he's just so happy when he does it, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, I want another one. Yeah.
But I also like that they don't do the gimmickry where he just doesn't believe them when they tell him that's not how we do it. He's like, oh, okay, and he doesn't.
Yeah, and he's just like kind of like it's not like really annoying that he's just like never accepts their customs or he never really grows until like the very last moment. He's like you kind of feel that it's like he's just like he likes making friends. He's just happy like with these people, and he's just like he's basically hanging out with them for like the second half of the movie.
I'd be happy hanging out with Natalie Portman. She's pretty awesome. And I guess we'll talk about her character now. She's the love interest, and her role is definitely underwritten. But, Natalie Portman, who had just won an Oscar for Black Swan and had kind of came out as a really fantastic actress, and she'd had some years there because of the Star Wars movies where we weren't sure. Mm-hmm. And I think she's really good in this. And she makes you believe that this woman is a brilliant scientist.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. And so she sells that, intelligence. And I think it's part of that is just Natalie Portman is an intelligent woman. She like speaks 3 languages and graduated from Harvard, so it's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. But she's really good. I like Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, I love his. He has like probably my favorite scene in the movie with Thor. Like my favorite dramatic scene is just him and Thor like in the bar, and they're like talking. Yeah, I love that scene.
But I think the relationship and the character. So Natalie Portman's character is a little underwritten, and the relationship between them is a little underwritten. Yeah. But Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman work so well together, you don't really think about that.
Yeah, it's like because that was one of your huge complaints about the movie when like you had first seen
And
it. Like you really,
yeah.
And it's like I agreed with you. It's like it's not like it's a great romance, but it's like there's not a whole lot of emphasis.
I was
on
looking
romance.
at it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I was looking at it as an emphasis thing, and I think when you go back to it, and I just watch it as a movie and not nitpicking or anything or trying to judge it, I saw it as this works really well. It's just part of his transformation.
Yeah, it's just like honestly, I really like how the romance develops because it feels way more natural than in most movies.
I agree.
Where it's just like they kind of hang out together and then they just start liking each other. Basically, it's not like this huge thing.
They each
just like each other,
and it's really simple. Where they each have something the other needs. He is this missing link she's been looking for, and he can offer her these secrets that. It's something different that she's always wanted in her life, and she's this human connection that allows him to come to Earth and be okay there.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. And it's just that, again, boiling it down to almost these Shakespearean simplicities that Kenneth Branagh can do. Not that Shakespeare is simple, but, you operate in these big archetypes.
Yeah.
And it works really well. But obviously, and we can talk about Kat Dennings for 5 seconds. She's the other girl on the scientific team.
She's annoying.
Yeah. Kat Dennings, I don't think does anything inherently bad in the movie, but she's given that part that is the plucky comic relief.
Yeah, it's like her character just didn't need to have as many lines as it did. Like,
Yeah.
I think the character kind of needed to be there, but it was there too much. Like, she kind of had to be there to kind of like almost be like when Thor was funny, she was like kind of like the comedic contrast to that.
Yeah.
And so it's like she kind of needed to be there for some of it, but she was there too much.
And I think she works in some moments, primarily when she's just being sarcastic about the events.
Yeah.
That can give good moments of brevity, but... and we have actually a lot more of the extended Marvel universe in here. We have Agent Coulson plays a big role. Is Nick Fury in the movie?
If he is, he's only in it for a little bit. He just doesn't have a big part.
I don't remember if he is or not, but have Agent Coulson and some other S.H.I.E.L.D. people in it. And I actually really like Clark Gregg's Agent Coulson. He's an interesting character to me. And I like his presence. But the other big character, and I think he came out of left field and blew absolutely everyone who saw this movie away, is Tom Hiddleston as Loki.
Oh, God, yeah. He was so
good.
He was so good. Like, and that was one of the things I was worried about, is that they wouldn't be able to do Loki well. And I was worried that they wouldn't put Loki in his ridiculous hat with the giant horns. They totally did. And, like, even if the movie had sucked, it's like the movie, you have to respect the movie for having the balls to do that.
Yes.
To put Loki in, like, the most ridiculous, one of the most ridiculous superhero outfits that has ever been created. At least for a male character. It's like female characters have, it's like a whole nother level of ridiculous outfits. But for Loki, it's like he's got these ridiculous giant horns. But I think he totally sells it as being like the god of deceit, and that you can totally, I mean, that he's the villain when you go into the movie. Like, you can basically spot him immediately, because it's a very archetypal story. But I think you understand why the other characters trust him. Like, you can see, I think the relationship between Loki and Thor is really complex, and I think they sell it really well, where it's like, you feel like Thor really does love Loki like a brother. Like, he has that sort of respect. He has that sort of love for him. And Loki just isn't able to, like, feel that, and isn't able to access that, and is just deceiving everyone around him because he's fucking Loki.
Right.
And there's a really great scene where Odin reveals Loki's past. And, like, just between Anthony Hopkins and Tom Hiddleston, and that scene is really, really well done. And I think they really sell Loki as the complex villain that he needs to be. Yeah. And it's like he's deceptively complex, because it is kind of like what you're saying with, like, the Shakespearean stuff. It is inhabiting this, like, simple archetype. Yeah. But the character himself has so many shades of complexity.
Right. And that's what's great about Shakespeare play. You go into Hamlet, you can just say, oh, Hamlet's out for revenge and he can't make up his mind, but that's missing the point of the character. Yeah. It's got all these layers. And that's what you get here, is you can just say, oh, Loki's mad at his family and he wants to blow shit up. But that's not it at all. Yeah. And I love that you get to the end of the movie and you feel bad for Loki. It's like, you understand exactly why he's doing what he is. And when he's blowing up, the ice gods out of frustration, it's like, you want to, like, cry for this guy. It's like, I'm sorry, man, you had a terrible life. This is bad. And I love that Thor reaches that point, too, where he feels empathy for his brother. Yeah. And it's a powerful ending. And is it fair to say he's the best villain in the Marvel Universe so far?
I would say, probably.
Because I think Captain America had a good one, too, but he blows away everything up to this point.
Yeah, I definitely think, Tom Hiddleston. And, like, I mean, that's kind of like the one thing that Thor has that the other Marvel movies really don't, is that it's like, it does put a lot of weight into heavily develop the villain as much as it does the hero.
Yeah.
And in all the other Marvel movies, I mean, it's partially because the other ones don't have a lot of really good villains to draw on.
Yeah.
But Loki is one of the big heavy hitters in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Like, he's up there with Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
So it's like they really fully develop him, and it's one reason I'm really excited for the Avengers is that they're bringing him back as the villain.
You can. I think that you can feel like Joss Whedon sitting in a theater watching Thor and being like, he has to be in my movie. He just has to be, you know? And it's just, I think it's a really brilliant choice that, you know, if you have that actor and that character, use him again.
Yeah, especially because he feels really powerful too. Like you do, like with all those characters, you really feel like these are Asgardian gods.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's really nice that they're bringing him back, and like, I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen with Loki in the next movie.
And playing him off other characters. Like, I like the scene in the trailer where it's Tony Stark making fun of Loki.
Yeah, it's like, and it's just so ridiculous that you have this, like, totally narcissistic, like, drunk billionaire talking to this Asgardian, like, god of deceit.
Yeah.
Like, half ice giant.
Yeah, it's great. We missed a couple of characters who I do want to give a shout out to. I like Anthony Hopkins an awful lot as Odin.
Yeah.
That's really good casting. And we didn't talk about Thor. Oh, Idris Elba as Heimdall. I love
Heimdall. Yeah.
He's great. And I love, there's just is a good thing the Marvel movies do with little supporting characters where they have these little moments that are really satisfying, where he will not give the bridge over to Loki. And it's like, yeah, that's right, Heimdall, you will not give the bridge over to Loki. It's great. And then Thor's team of friends will come down.
Oh god, what is it, like it's like, what like their team has a name and I can't remember. It's like the Warriors 3, I think.
Yeah, the Warriors 3. And they're really entertaining to watch, and the actors do a good job just suggesting these characters. And I love when they get to Earth and they have similar moments as Thor where they don't understand it, but they're eager to learn.
Yeah,
and it's
just like they're just all these really happy characters.
Yeah,
and it's just like this. It's kind of like with Iron Man. I feel the same way with Thor. It's like it's just a really fun movie to watch.
Yeah,
but but it also hits these really nice dramatic moments too.
Yeah. Now, I know there's a moment you really love in Thor that you should probably mention, and that's the little cameo moment.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that made, like, it put one of the biggest smiles on my face in Thor, because it came completely out of nowhere. As far as I'm aware, nobody said anything about it, is that Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye pops up for, like, 5 minutes. Just, like, out of nowhere. Thor's, like, he's trying to get his hammer back, so he's infiltrating the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, and Clark Gregg's like, okay, we need to take him down, we need to detain him. And so it's like this scene of like all these people, then they're grabbing these guns off this wall, and then you see this hand reach for a gun, then it stops, and it goes up and it grabs a bow. I'm like, holy shit, what? What? And then it's like, and then you see it and it's like, that's fucking Hawkeye! Just out of nowhere, they just have this random superhero character. Nobody had any idea he was going to be there. I didn't even know that they were going to have him in the Avengers movie. It's just like, and he's just there in Thor, just working for S.H.I.E.L.D. as Hawkeye would be.
Yeah.
And he's just there. They don't put, like, any heavy emphasis on it. The character doesn't pop up again. He's just there. And that was one of the moments where I really realized, like...
They're doing it.
Yeah, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a thing. That it's like, they can just have characters pop in that would just be there in that situation without having any significance of the overall arcing plot.
Yeah.
And they can just be there to fulfill that role. Like Peter Parker would be investigating a crime scene or whatever, or not a crime scene, like you'd be at a court case doing a report or something. Like the character can just be there doing that thing and then leave the story. And it's just great. That's just a really cool moment that I think was really cool that they just threw it in there.
Yep. And I definitely, when I watched that scene again, Sean had told me this, and I watched it really giddy because I knew Sean had liked it, and I could see how effortlessly they were just playing the strings of
because
the fans.
If you know who Hawkeye is, it's just like, because you just like, the scene is just like, it's kind of this really standard shot. It's like, there's nothing exceptional about it. But then it's like, it just pauses, and then he grabs a bow, and you're like, what?
That's what I was going to say. That's just a brilliant little moment of playing to the fans without taking away from the movie itself.
Yeah.
So it's great. And the other thing I want to say about Thor is the art direction is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, especially like in Asgard and in Svartalfheim.
And this is why, of all the Marvel movies, this is the one I'm most excited to see a sequel to, because now that the hard part is out of the way, the origin story, they have limitless potential for sequels. They can go to all of these other universes. They've got, the Rainbow Bridge, all these places they can go. You can go explore Asgard more.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so easy to get a villain because you could create a really creative character from this other world. And I want to explore that universe more in the sequel.
Yeah, I agree. It's really interesting that through Marvel and taking the Thor character from Norse mythology, you sort of get these Norse mythological movies now. Yeah. It's I am really excited to see Thor 2 and see what they're going to do with it and what other elements from the mythology that they're going to bring into it.
Yep. And it's going to come out November 2013, so it's already in development. Kenneth Branagh will not be directing it, which is a little sad, but the guy they've gotten to replace him, I'm actually a little excited about this, is Alan Taylor. He's never directed a movie before, but he's a big TV director, and his big claim to fame is he's done 4 episodes of the TV show Game of Thrones. No. And I can tell you right now, those are the 4 most cinematic episodes of TV I have ever seen. Alan Taylor is a very strong visual TV director, and you can see with Game of Thrones how easily that would translate into Thor. And if the script is there, I think that could work really well. If they bring back the characters and keep working on those relationships and stuff, should be good, and I'm excited to see it. But now,
hopefully Thor will fight aliens.
Yes.
It's they're just aliens, and they're just there on Earth. He goes into a cave, finds a stick.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do that.
All right. So now we're going to talk about my personal favorite Marvel movie, and honestly one of my favorite movies of the last couple of years. And this is Captain America, the First Avenger, is its awkward subtitle. And Captain America, for me, so this came out 2 months after Thor. Thor was May 2011, Captain America was July. And there had been advertising for both for a while. And I had the sort of opposite reaction to you with Thor, where I was actually really excited for Thor. I liked what I was seeing in the trailers and stuff. And with Captain America, I was a little more ambivalent. I liked the trailer, but I was wondering if they could really do it right. It just seemed like there had been so many people that had taken a shot at this before, and we know about the famously failed TV movies and stuff.
Yeah. It's for me, I was super excited about Captain America because everything I saw looked absolutely perfect to me. Okay. They were doing the right story that they were doing Captain America in World War II.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciated all that. It was more or less about the marketing was very good. Mm-hmm. It was more I don't even know why I wasn't as much excited for it, but, I went to see it opening day, and I just didn't have huge expectations, but there are very few experiences I can remember in a theater being that giddy for 2 solid hours, but the moment it started to the moment it ended, I was just happy watching this movie, and I had a huge grin on my face. I love every second of this film. I think it is so much fun. I think it just wants to have fun with the audience and do a good story, and I like the sort of heartfelt center of it. It all feels so earnest to me. None of it is forced. I love the action. I think it's probably got the strongest third act of the Marvel movies so far. Yeah. I like the villain. I think Chris Evans. Is it Chris Evans?
Yeah, it's Chris Evans.
Yeah, Chris Evans is a phenomenal Captain America, and just all the casting is great, and it's just I'm almost incoherent about it because that's how much I liked this movie. Do you want to back up and you talk about it for a minute?
Okay, yeah. So for me, I don't think I liked it quite. I mean, I really loved it. I think
you understand why.
Yeah, I really understand. I mean, I like the movie for the same reason you do. I think for me, the first Iron Man movie comes up a little bit ahead of Captain America for me.
Yeah.
I think you. I almost think you had a similar experience with Captain America that I did with Thor once Thor did the Hawkeye thing.
Yeah.
Is that once Thor did the Hawkeye thing, it's I couldn't stop smiling.
Well,
that made me so happy in that movie.
Well, let me jump in here because I think why Captain America appeals to me so strongly is because, backing up, one of my 5 or 6 favorite movies of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Mm-hmm. And Captain America is directed by Joe Johnston, who was the second unit director on that and has worked with Spielberg a bunch. And this is, to me, the closest anyone, including Steven Spielberg, has ever come to replicating what made Raiders of the Lost Ark work as well as it did. And it just plays exactly to what I like in an adventure movie. And it's, to my taste, so perfectly that's why, when they started, and there is a moment where the Red Skull at the very beginning of the movie mentions that the Führer is out looking for trinkets in the desert. And, and to think that this movie is going on in the same universe as Indiana Jones just blew my mind. And I was like, it's what you said, after that moment, I was just on board for this.
I actually had a really similar response. Not to the the Indiana Jones reference at the beginning,
Yeah.
but like they tied it a little bit into Thor at the very beginning,
Yeah.
because he's looking for the cosmic cube, which
Yeah.
is like which has some stuff to do with the Asgardian stuff. And
Yeah.
it like goes into like that church and is like he's like talking about the Asgardian ruins. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like that it's just I think that's really cool that they were even able to tie it in where it's like
Yeah.
these movies were released like 2 months apart. And they
Yeah.
still were able to tie some Thor stuff into Captain America, knowing that Thor came out first.
Yeah. But when I interrupted you, go back to what you were talking about with the movie.
I don't remember what I was talking about.
Okay.
Well, it's just like I really, really love this movie, and I think, like I said, I think this movie adapts one of my favorite Captain America like origins or stories that I've ever read,
Yeah.
which was in the Ultimates, which is the Ultimate Marvel Universe version of the Avengers, which is basically just an updated version of the Avengers, and that's where Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury comes from. In the first Ultimates, they did a sort of basically the very similar story of Captain America in World War II, and it was just like it kind of had a similar feeling where it was like very much this like World War II kind of like not propaganda film, but like a film like action serial
Yeah.
from that era. And it's like it very much had that sort of feeling and that vibe to it. And it's like the design, they drew so much from that story arc in the Ultimates in this movie, like the design of his costume and just sort of like the attitude. And I absolutely loved that. And I think they just did Captain America so well, and they just made the perfect decision in capturing the sort of Indiana Jones vibe of like this is how like it is very propagandic because that's what Captain America is, and it's like it's not really ashamed of that. That it's like it's proud of what it is, and it's proud of this being kind of like silly and over the top and just fun.
Yeah, but I think in some ways though it's also an interesting movie to come out in 2011, where now patriotism is used as this political tool, where one side or the other will say if you don't agree with us, then you're not a patriot, then you're un-American and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Captain America just reduces it to this simplicity that I think is in many ways true, where it's just all patriotism means is that you believe in something and you believe strongly in it, and that Steve Rogers does that, and he changes the people around him for it, and that's a simple but inspiring little message that works really well. And I think that's where we should just start our discussion. Let's the characters again is where we always need to start. Mm-hmm. And again, Chris Evans totally on par with Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. Really good casting. Obviously, Steve Rogers is not as showy a character as those other two, but that doesn't take anything away from his performance. I think in some ways it's just as difficult as those, because you have to sell this character as the earnest, patriot person who wants to join the army so bad, and that's got to be a hard thing to play. But he does it really well. For the first half hour of the movie, he's CGI, which is a great effect.
Yeah, those effects are terrific.
Yeah. And then you have to obviously give Chris Evans props for getting as ripped as he did for the reveal scene when he comes out of the tube. For the whole movie, I love how he commands the screen, and I love how he's always recognizably that, the little skinny kid from the beginning of the movie to the end. It's not about a dynamic character, really, but he always has this purity, and Chris Evans manages to keep that around even in the big action scenes. So I really like his character. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's a really, really good Captain America, especially in the origin story of really does sell that he is Steve Rogers. He is this guy who he just really feels like he needs to be out there and he needs to be helping his country, and he's going to do whatever it takes to be able to do that. And he has this very charming like innocence and purity to him. And one thing I'm actually really excited for, and I want to see them do, is they're probably not going to do it in the Avengers, but post Avengers, kind of developing Captain America more into the sort of hard-edged Captain America of like in comics today. Where it's like Captain America in comics today, he's like more badass than Batman. Like he's the ultimate badass is Captain America, because he's the guy who he's not. I mean, he does have superpowers, and it's like he's stronger than like a normal human probably could be. He's got better reflexes and all that. But he's not Superman. Like he can't do completely unbelievable feats of just like of ultimate human endurance or anything. He's like Spider-Man is stronger and more agile than Captain America is, but Captain America has been through more shit than like anyone ever, and he's just like. And so he's just so badass. And so I'm really excited to see how they're going to develop the character even later. And I think you can kind of see a bit of that Captain America near the end of the film after he does like the montage of him fighting in all those battles, and then when it comes
Yeah.
to the end of the film, like you get this sense it's like he's gone through some shit now.
I think his best scene in the movie may be where he's after Bucky dies.
Yeah.
He's in although you have a theory about Bucky that we'll get to in a second.
Bucky's not dead.
Yeah, I know. So after Bucky, for in his eyes, dies, he's in the ruined building and he's drinking, and Peggy Carter comes in, and it's just this really dark moment where he says, he explains the physiology.
He
and
can't
says,
get drunk because he
Yeah.
metabolizes the alcohol too fast.
Yeah, great. It's so
Yeah,
simple.
it's
but
such a
so-
great scene.
Yeah,
It's just like really sad.
and that's a good place to jump in for Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter. I did not know who Haley Atwell was before this movie, but I really wanted to find out after because I think she's really
she's
good.
really, really good as Peggy Carter.
I mean, it's hard to find a woman today who can play that sort of 40s woman, like a young woman, who can play that 40s woman so well. It's 40s sort of strong female figure. And also that they sell that as someone, and I like it sort of, it's underlined as someone who, she's made it this far in the military and everything, but she's hardened because of it, because she is a woman, and that would be difficult for the time to do everything she's done. And she and Cap have just great chemistry. And I like their sort of upstanding sort of, she comes from sort of a British side. He's a very sort of shy side of it.
Yeah.
And their relationship is different, but it works really well. That's something all the Marvel movies have done really well, is the relationships, which so many superhero movies just succumb to.
Yeah.
What, you have anything to say?
For me, like coming from the comic book sides, Peggy Carter isn't a huge
Yeah.
because like she is that character in the really old 40s Captain America comic books, but it's like in the 1940s they didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on Peggy Carter. But one thing I'm curious about, I don't know if they're doing it, but Peggy Carter's daughter or granddaughter is Sharon Carter, who's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Yeah.
It's probably started as a daughter and then it became granddaughter once like the Marvel Universe was like in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Somehow,
Got
like
older.
even though like all the characters are the same age,
Yeah.
it's like now all of a sudden she's the granddaughter because World War II all of a sudden was 70 years ago. Peter
Yeah.
Parker's still 30.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm wondering if they're going to have Sharon Carter. Can you go on the Wikipedias and
For, like, the Avengers?
just go to the Avengers and then
Yeah.
and then also I think
Not that Avengers.
yes, not the British TV show Avengers. I don't think Sharon Carter's in that.
Yeah.
But I think it would just be interesting if they put her in or not.
The word Carter does not appear on the page, nor does Sharon.
No,
well.
Maybe she'll still be in the movie.
I actually did read an interview with Joss Whedon the other day, and he had written a scene for the movie that he cut just because he thought it was too focused on one character in particular, where Cap meets an old Peggy Carter in the movie, and he said maybe we'll save that for a Captain America movie or something.
Yeah.
But so they were going.
There's a scene like that in the Ultimates that's really fucking depressing.
Yeah.
Where he goes and talks to old Peggy Carter. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that'll be interesting to see because I'm sure that they'll put her in the next Captain America movie because she's a huge Captain America supporting character.
But it is sort of interesting that, Haley Atwell's so good in this, but she's never going to get to play the character again because they're out of that time period, unless Cap finds a time machine, which would maybe be a little out of keeping with the...
I don't know. I mean, the Marvel Universe, they could do it.
But yeah, so, and I think the real testament to her character and their chemistry is at the end of the movie when Captain America is going down with the ship.
Yeah.
And they have the conversation over the phone, and they're just talking about how they're going to go dancing together. Great moment. It got me a little teary in theaters. Like, that was just a good emotional moment.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah. And then you end it, and it's good that she's is keeping the picture of him as the skinny kid it was, and you have to think it's sad for her too because now she's going to go the rest of her life thinking he's dead.
Yeah, no, like that's the most tragic part. Like knowing, like when I was watching the scene and knowing how it actually ends, that Captain America gets frozen is like that he has to wake up the next day with her being dead. Like he actually, instead of him sacrificing himself, he still survives.
Yeah.
And she's really she's really old or she's dead, and then she goes through her entire life with Steve being gone.
Right. And they do that perfectly. So, Hugo Weaving plays the villain, Johann Schmidt, also known as Red Skull.
The Red Skull.
Not a complex character in the slightest, but that's what you get Hugo Weaving for, and he's fucking awesome.
And that's, I mean, come on, he's a Nazi. It's like he's an evil Nazi, and you couldn't want anything more from the Red Skull.
Yeah. Like it says here, he based his accent on Werner Herzog. That's awesome. The other sort of villain in the movie is you had, what's his name? Toby Jones is like Zola, his like assistant.
Yeah, he's like the scientist.
Yeah, I kind of like that dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's a good sort of serial sort of thing you have with the old fat, or the young fat scientist and the evil Nazi. So
There's also there's another kind of Hawkeye-esque moment in the movie where where Captain America, where he goes in and he rescues Bucky, and then he rescues all the other guys, and Dum Dum Dugan's there. Who's in Dum Dum Dugan is a character who, I think they actually made these in the 60s. They had Sergeant Fury's Howling Commandos, which is where Nick Fury originally came from, as he was a sergeant who led an elite squad of commandos. Called the Howling Commandos, and his second in command was this big portly British guy named Dum Dum Dugan, who had a bowler hat and this big fuck off mustache. He's the most British. He's basically just a British stereotype, but he's just this really because he's kind of he's kind of in the Call of Duty games Captain Price, where it's he's that kind of British badass.
Yeah,
it's just he's a really great character, and they just have him in there, and it's he's just if you watch Captain America, just look for the dude with the giant.
Well, he becomes the character in the movie because he's
Dum Dum Dugan. Yeah,
right.
And there's a few. I think they changed some of the cast of the Howling. I don't remember all the Howling Commandos.
I like the team. It's sort of like in Thor. I like that team dynamic.
Yeah, they just have this team of people. Some of them are different than what were in the actual Howling Commandos, but it's when they first did that and they had the black guy, because I don't think there was a black Howling Commando. There might have been. I don't remember. But it's I thought that was because I thought that was going to be Nick Fury, but Nick Fury's dad or something to try to tie it in, but they didn't do that.
Okay.
That was a little. I mean, that would have been really fucking complicated to try to explain that relationship. But
so the other characters, the other sort of member of the Howling Commandos, but also his friend, is Sebastian Stan, plays James Bucky Barnes.
Bucky.
And Bucky's not much of a character in this movie. I think he's got a good chemistry with Chris Evans, and it's sad when he dies, but tell us your theory.
He didn't die, though, because there's no way Bucky's dead. Because, I mean, I think they did this intentionally, almost as a joke, where it's not as a joke, but it's a little nod to the fans, where it's when Bucky dies, they're on the train, and Bucky's falling off, and then he falls, and then before he hits it, cuts away, and then it cuts back, and you don't see anything there, and so you never actually see him die.
Yeah.
It's this totally... They're totally setting that up as Bucky coming back, because Bucky does come back, and he's Winter Soldier, and he's a villain, but he's not really a villain, and then he's a hero, and then he's a villain, and then he's Captain America, and then Steve Rogers comes back, and he's Captain America, and then Bucky's Captain America. It's really fucking confusing.
Do you think they could build that as a good sequel idea, though?
I'm sure they're going to bring Bucky back they're probably going to bring him back as villain in Captain America too.
Okay.
That would be the way to go with it, and then him becoming. It probably ended with him being redeemed or something.
Yeah. All right, two other big characters in the movie. We have Tommy Lee Jones as Tommy Lee Jones. He has a name. It's Colonel Chester Phillips. But
there's Chester Phillips, because I don't even know. I don't have any idea who that character is in comic books. He
Minor...
doesn't have his own. The character first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 63. Okay, so it looks like he wasn't. He was just a random side character.
Yeah.
In the Marvel universe at the time.
But he's just Tommy Lee Jones.
He's just he's a U.S. Army colonel.
But I like him. I love Tommy Lee Jones. He's good in it. And then you have Dominic Cooper plays a young Howard Stark. I like young Howard Stark.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's really interesting to see kind of the connection between him and Tony. How he's really, he's not exactly Tony Stark.
Yeah, you can see how this man, however, would create Tony Stark.
Yeah,
and I like his dynamic with Steve Rogers.
Cap.
And finally, I really love Stanley Tucci in this movie as Dr. Abraham, who gives who gives him the serum, and there's some nice emotional beats between them. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where the day before the experiment, they're sitting on the bed and they're drinking, but he doesn't let Cap drink. And it's just a good story. And you have the whole sort of, again, going back to serials and comic books where he created Red Skull, and the past is coming back to haunt him. So good stuff. Now the story itself, it's a really sound superhero story. I think with all the other Marvel movies, you can kind of point to little flaws in the structure or something. Captain America feels really seamless from beginning to end. And I think that's because it's sort of like the first Iron Man, where the origin story is the whole story. Because it's not just what happens to him in the test chamber, it's what he does after that makes him Captain America.
Before it really is only until the very end of the movie that he really becomes Captain America when he fights Red Skull.
And it's a pretty, simple story. He wants to be a soldier. He goes through the trial. He has to go find the Red Skull and hunt down all his bases. And lots of good action scenes. I want to talk about that. I think they implemented the shield really well.
Yeah, the shield was really fucking cool in the movie.
Yeah. They did that well. I loved all the action. I think all the Marvel movies, the best action scenes tend to come before the end.
Yeah.
But this one still has a good finale, especially where he's fighting the Red Skull on the plane, and that's really cool. And he has a great one-liner at the end there against Red Skull that I always forget, but I love it. And it's where I think Red Skull says, "I envision a world without flags," and he says, "Not my world," and then takes it out. It's great. Just
Red Skull's probably not dead either, by the way.
Right.
I'm sure they're going to bring it back. Just so you know.
But just the unabashed patriotism you were talking about, and the not being afraid to be itself. And Captain America has my favorite score of the Marvel movies. Alan Silvestri did a great John Williams impression, and just made a great theme for Captain America. And he also wrote with Alan Menken the song that is the best part of Captain America, which is the Star
Spangled Man?
Yeah, Spangled, which is the propaganda song that Captain America performs in. And that's the part of the movie where I was like so giddy. People were like looking around at me, like, because I was sitting in the seat giggling through that whole scene that he's got this team of girls who are singing with him.
He punches Hitler. That's
like great.
This is like that whole montage is just brilliant. And
I've knocked out Hitler 73 times.
And he's got. I love it. They do like a nod to his old shield, like it's like kind of like a pentagram shaped shield,
and the original costume.
Yeah.
So that seems great, and I think it's pretty cool that they found a way to make the costume not look stupid. It looks cool and it looks functional.
It's like it's the same way in the Ultimates, where it's like they definitely make it look like if you wore the Captain America costume when you were actually in World War II, because it's like it's all grimed up and stuff. It's like it's got the bright primary colors, but they're kind of like they're scarred and grimy. And he's got like all these like pouches and shit because he's in World War II and he wore pouches and shit.
Yeah. So I just wonderful movie. Makes me this is the movie that really solidified my excitement for the Avengers, because now all the pieces were in place. Mm-hmm. And it has the teaser at the end of the movie for Avengers, which looked awesome. So
it's like, and as soon as I saw that teaser, I was like, this is like what? Why does this feel so familiar? And I'm like, oh, it's Joss Whedon. It's like you can immediately tell that Joss Whedon directed the teaser at the end.
Yep. It's great. I love this movie, and I think the only thing you could point out as a flaw to me is that the very end is a little abrupt, that he gets out into New York.
Yeah, I think they could have handled that a little better.
But to me, the ending of the movie, though, is when he dies, air quotes, and Peggy's sad, and then you have the scene where all the kids are playing as Captain America in the street, which is just a nice thing about his legacy going on. That's when the movie ends, and then it's like this epilogue.
Yeah, that's like, because it's like it kind of felt like it was kind of meant to be after the credits, but it was too important to actually have after the credits. So it's like they're just kind of in a... Yeah, I agree. It's like there's just kind of like this weird situation.
But then the credits are awesome because they have all this propaganda artwork as the credits. Mm-hmm. So, again, just a really strong voice during the movie. Joe Johnston directing, and he just had such a clear vision for it. And Joe Johnston has had kind of a rough career where he keeps getting chances to be the sort of the main man on a movie, and sometimes they've been good, like The Rocketeer, but they flop. Or sometimes he has to direct Jurassic Park 3 to pay the bills, and then you feel bad for the guy. But, I hope I would like to see him return for the sequel. I don't quite know what the plan is for that. But they are planning the sequel for 2014. So they just announced that.
That is one of the things that's going to be really interesting, is seeing the Captain America 2, because it's going to have to be a completely different setting.
Right.
Because they can't do World War II anymore.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing.
Unless they do a time machine.
And I guess that's one of the other things I like about Captain America 1 is that it feels like a complete movie. It doesn't feel like it's setting anything up.
Yeah.
They got everything they needed to say in this time period out there, and you're not lacking anything at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. So that's all the Marvel movies. Avengers comes out in a couple weeks. And, we're both pretty sure at this point Avengers is going to be great. It's probably going to be the best of the Marvel movies. Yeah. It would have to be to work, I think.
Yeah.
If it works, it just automatically is the best. But after Avengers, I wanted to talk about this. What do you want to see out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward?
What I would really like to see that's probably not going to happen would be them getting their other properties back. Yeah. I really wish that they'd be able to get Spider-Man back. I also really wish they could get Fantastic Four. I really want to see a good Fantastic Four movie, and Fantastic Four is just so important to the Marvel universe as a whole. But as they're going forward now, I would like to see them developing Ant-Man, like Hank Pym, bringing him in, because he has some really important stuff that they can do for villains in a potential Avengers 2.
There's talk that Edgar Wright has been developing an Ant-Man movie, and he's a fantastic director, so that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Because, they need to get Hank Pym and Janet, his wife, the Wasp, because they're also two of the original Avengers, and they're also I think they need to do some stuff to set up some really strong villains in the Avengers 2, because they've got Loki now. Yeah. It's they need to do something for the next one, so I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So it's they could do Ultron if they bring in Hank Pym. I guess trying to think what are the other really huge. I mean, the one reason they need to get a Fantastic Four is they need to have Doctor Doom. They have got to get Doctor Doom in the main Marvel universe, because he's the Marvel villain.
Yeah.
He's the hot shot.
And it's funny because my main exposure to Doctor Doom is the shitty Fantastic Four movie where he's the most boring villain ever.
Doctor Doom is the greatest villain. When you talk about egotistical characters, Doctor Doom, Doctor Doom thinks he's a god. He really honestly thinks he is the best person to ever have existed. Yeah. And he's he owns his own country. He's the ruler of Latveria. And it's he's this dictator despot, and so nobody can touch him because he's got diplomatic immunity.
But you agree with me, they fucked him up in the movie.
They fucked him up in the they didn't make him awesome at all.
Well, it was just basically what they boiled it down to is he liked Sue Storm.
Yeah, Sue is he definitely wasn't.
He was a romantic foil, not a villain.
Yeah, it's when you start tangling with Doctor Doom, shit's about to get real. That's how it feels in the Marvel universe. It's kind of he's kind of on the same level as Magneto. Okay. It's once you get Doctor Doom involved, stuff is going to go down.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward. Hopefully they can get some of their movie rights back and develop some more properties. Because they've used up most of their main ones. I can't really think of any big Marvel heavy hitters that they haven't made movies of. Doctor Strange would be another new property that they've been saying they're going to make into a movie for a while. That he's pretty high profile.
Yeah. Well, for me, I would like to see that they've talked a little bit about this, maybe doing this, is spin-offs for some of the characters they've introduced already. They've talked about doing a Nick Fury movie with Samuel L. Jackson. Or a S.H.I.E.L.D. movie with him.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting. I would like to see the Black Widow movie if they ever do it. If they want to do a standalone War Machine movie, I think that could totally work. Because as I understand it, there's a lot of good material to draw from.
Yeah.
So, and you've got a good actor there, and I assume he's signed on for a bunch. Since the Edward Norton thing, they've been better about getting contracts for their actors so they can keep using them. I'd like to see more crossovers in the sequels. If they can do it, it would be cool to see, Steve Rogers step into Iron Man 3 or something.
Yeah, but just for him to be there for a little bit without, being a huge character in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And I know there are contractual things there that make it very difficult to do that, but it would be interesting to see them do that. I want, good sequels of all these. I'd like to keep Joss Whedon on the Avengers train and maybe even have him do one of the standalones someday. Say, hey, Joss, what character do you want to direct? And, let him run with it. Lots of interesting possibilities. I want to see a standalone Hulk movie that is really good and has a clear vision. I want to see them get a good filmmaker in.
With the Hulk talks.
Yes.
They got to do that.
Yep. And because it's possible, and just do something that really... I don't think it should be too hard to do a great Hulk movie. If they can do Thor, if they can do Captain America in the 40s, they can do a good Hulk movie.
Yeah, I've just been thinking another really interesting storyline that they could do. It would take a really long time to set this up, and they'd probably need to have even more characters ready.
Yeah.
Would be the Civil War storyline that they did in the comic books in 2006, which is a really huge storyline where the heroes kind of get split and are fighting each other.
They would need Spider-Man for that, though, right?
They don't need him, but it would be a lot, because there's a huge where Peter Parker reveals himself in Civil War.
I remember that. That was news on CNN when he did that.
And it's and Captain America dies after the Civil War event. It's a really, really good comic book crossover in an era where a lot of comic book crossovers were really terrible.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool if they could set that up. Another one, I cannot remember the name of the character, but another Marvel movie that would be really cool was in the 60s. When Bruce Lee was really big, they had this character he was this kung fu guy, and there's basically his power was that he was really good at kung fu. It'd be really awesome to see a movie based on it. I think it was Shang-Chi was his name.
Yeah,
it'd be really cool to see a martial arts movie, a Marvel martial arts movie with that.
Yeah.
And he also had this other guy with him, Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, who He was kind of like a Dragon Ball Z character, but he couldn't fly. Like he
Okay.
could channel his chi into his fist and
Nice.
punch people. So that would be another property that would be really interesting to see
Yeah.
him do like a cool martial arts type thing.
So I'm excited about the future of Marvel, especially the immediate future. So next month, the next podcast, we will definitely talk about the Avengers. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe depending on how our schedules work, we could just do a standalone bonus podcast where we just break down the movie, because I assume you'll see it as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to. And maybe if we'll both be up here because we have finals anyway
Yeah.
and stuff, and we could probably find an hour to do a 30-40 minute podcast breaking the movie down. If that falls through, I already have the topic in mind for that for next month. That'll be up around the 15th of May, and then we'll just talk about the Avengers. We'll roll it into that. But no matter what, the next podcast will be about the Avengers. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get it out on like May 5th or 6th that weekend. So you can, and we'll do a spoiler-ish discussion. So you can come just listen to us discuss the movie. And we'll do a spoiler warning and everything. And I'll have, obviously a spoiler-free review on the website. So that's the future. Next month's topic is going to be...
the future.
Yes. Next month's topic, I have a good idea I'm about to just tell Sean about, but I think it'll be fun. And...
Next time on the podcast,
Yes.
something that will be kind of fun.
Yes. So visit www.jonathanlack.com for more content, and we will see you next month.
Bye.